The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. It's Monday and we are in July. It's a new day, a new dawn, a new month, and a new era here in the state of California. We officially have an autism insurance. I've said autism the way my son does. Autism insurance reform is here. It is in effect here in the state of California today. So we're going to be talking about things having to do with that a little bit for the next couple of weeks. Do have a little bit of a disclaimer. On Friday, we had a great show on Friday, if I do say so myself, because we had wonderful guests. We had the fabulous Misty Mackey was with us, and she is someone who works in insurance contracts at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. And we were talking about insurance and deductibles and how you at home are going to face the issue of deductible. And I want to be 100% clear that one of the things that I was talking about, and that we're going to talk more about today, is that there are things that you can do to help yourself to make that insurance deductible. In some cases, it can be as high as $5,000. I guess it's even possible that it's more than that, but the highest I've heard and the typical that I have heard is $5,000 deductible. And I know as an autism parent, that can seem overwhelming, that you go, wait a second, we just fought and fought and fought for the right to be able to pay $5,000 every year to even, get any of this paid for. But one of the things I brought up then is that I want you to remember that coming up with $5,000 is a lot easier than coming up with $100,000 or $140,000 or even $30,000 worth of treatment. And typically for our children, those are the dollar amounts that we're going to be looking at without insurance, right? So, but that $5,000 is nonetheless something that is an issue for the vast majority of us, right? Who amongst us has $5,000 laying around on a yearly basis that we go, oh, I had no plans for that anyway? Nobody I know, especially not in this economy. And one of the things that I said on the show was that if you find that insurmountable, would you please write to Autism Live here at Autism Live? And we are going to be talking later on today about some suggestions that we at Autism Live have for you about how you can make that easier, how you can make that transition easier. I've got some suggestions. I personally have some suggestions for you about a couple of funding sources that lend money and that you can pay back monthly on them. I personally have some suggestions about some grants and some organizations that can help you to bridge that gap. I want to make sure that you guys realize that your ABA provider, well, whoever that is, whether that be the Center for Autism and Related Disorders or any one of 1,000 other ABA providers, they are a good resource for helping you to find out what your insurance covers. And they will and should, any ABA provider should be willing to help you to find out what the insurance covers. But that deductible is going to be your responsibility, right? But here at Autism Live, I personally and Autism Live, we want to help you to overcome that $5,000. I just want to be abundantly clear, excuse me, that your ABA provider is not in a position to help you with that deductible. They've got 1,000 other things that they're working on for you. That's not who you're going to go to for that. Come to us at Autism Live. When I say us, I'm talking about Autism Live. And I, Shannon Penrod, would like for you to be able to figure that out, because as I was saying on the show on Friday, it is so very important that we not say, okay, well, I can't afford the $5,000, which means my child is not going to get this life-changing therapy. And I was very adamant about it on Friday that we're not allowed to do that. It feels like sometimes that it's just this overwhelming thing, but $5,000, there are ways that you can surmount that, and I want to help you to surmount that. I personally, and we at Autism Live. So write to us at Autism Live if you are terrified and thinking, I have no ideas, I don't know how I'm going to pay for this. Trust me, if this had been 4 years ago when I was going through what we were going through with our journey through autism, and somebody had said it's going to be $5,000, I just would have sat down and cried. We had a similar circumstance. It wasn't because of insurance, but I have to be careful what I say because we kind of went through an issue with my son's school that we were asking for some services from the school, and the way that it eventually worked out after a lot of strife and papers filed. I'm picking my words very carefully here because I don't want to say too much. But in any case, it was a situation where the services were going to be provided, but we had to pay for them first, then present the bill and be reimbursed for them. And I was so grateful because we were getting what we had asked for, essentially. But we had to come up with this amount of money every month, and it was overwhelming. But we found a way to work it out. We found a really wonderful organization that I'm going to talk to you guys about later on. There are ways that these things can be worked, but it is our responsibility as the parents to figure it out. And I've got some suggestions for you that are going to be coming in our last hour today under the funding tip suggestions. So stick with us for that, okay? But again, I want to remind you that your ABA provider is not in a position to help you with that. That deductible is your responsibility, but I personally have some suggestions for you. Hope we're 100% clear on that. All right. So confusing. But in any case, we are going to be with you for the next 3 hours talking about topics having to do with autism and how you and I can be more efficient, more effective working with our kids on the spectrum. It doesn't matter whether you're a parent, a teacher, a practitioner. I know if you're here with us that that's something that's really of paramount importance to you. It certainly is of paramount importance to me because I'm a parent. I'm the parent of a 9-year-old who was diagnosed with autism when he was 2.5. He is the light and joy of my life. If you tune into the show, I talk about him way too much. But our journey through autism was difficult. I am not going to candy coat it because why would I? It was really, really difficult. It was emotional. It was financially devastating. But you know what? The truth of the matter was that my son got the help that he needed. So all of that other stuff, where I'm at now with a 9-year-old, seems incidental. All of it, I'm going to tell you quite honestly, when I was going through it, I shed many, many tears. I still shed tears over it, right? But it was all worth it for where we are now. And my son will be going into completely included 4th grade in the fall. By the way, he's been completely included since he was in kindergarten. And when he was 3, we were told that that was just not going to be realistic, that I should let go of that. Well, I didn't, nor did my husband, and I'm really glad that I didn't. I'm really glad that we fought and sucked it up and cried and got through all the hard things and filled out more paper than I ever want to fill out ever again in my life, and made more phone calls than I ever want to make again in my life, because it was worth it. So please know that when I'm here and talking to you, that one of the big things that we talk about is ABA, Applied Behavior Analysis, because it is the only scientifically proven effective treatment for autism. It is, by the way, the therapy that my son had that gave him back to us. And it is effective for all of our kids. I should mention that. Whether your child is very profoundly affected, whether your child is only mildly affected with autism, it is effective in creating progress for all of our kids. Their outcomes are all going to be different. And anybody who tells you that a specific outcome is guaranteed, I can't I have no idea what they're talking about. I can't speak for them, but I am not aware of anything scientifically that says this particular outcome is guaranteed, except for all of our kids, when they do ABA in the right amount for the right amount of time, make progress. They're all going to start in different places, they're going to finish in different places, but progress is what is guaranteed when you do the right amount of ABA over the right amount of time. And so critical that we remember that, because this is part of what's going to be happening with insurance, is that we need to ensure that our kids are getting the right amount for the right amount of time. And you've got somebody who's on the line, your insurance company, that is responsible for paying for it if you take certain steps, right? So we'll be talking about those things as well in the coming weeks. So very worth it. Again, I want to remind you, since we're talking about ABA, that I am not an expert in ABA. Not an expert in behavior, not an expert in autism. I am a mom and a former teacher, and I come to you with that skill set that my son, we've been on this journey for a long time now, certainly not as long as some of you have been, but I am here to be the conduit to information for you. This is meant to be a conversation. So you tell me what you need, and I'm gonna go and try to get you the information that you're asking for. It may be that you give me information to share with everybody else, because it may be that you know something that everybody else could benefit from. Misty Mackey sat here the other day, and she mentioned that in the state of California, and that you should look into it in your individual states, that there is gap insurance right now until the Affordable Health Care Act takes over. There's gap insurance for child only in the state of California, because a lot of us have been in that position about, well, you know, if I'm going to get insurance for my child, first I have to get insurance for me, and it gets really overwhelming cost-wise, right? But there is child only insurance in the state of California, and while they can't exclude you because of an autism diagnosis, what they can do is up your rate, right? But if you register for the health insurance in the month of your child's birth, that they can, the maximum that they can charge you is double what they would have charged someone else who didn't have the autism diagnosis. And I heard that and I was like, well, double sounds like a lot to me, but in any other month, they can charge you as much as 6 times what they would charge somebody else. So add that up over a couple of years, and it's shocking to think how much money you could save by only paying double. You know, these are some really important things that we all need to be aware of. I wouldn't even have known to have asked that question, would you? But that's why we get experts in here who are going to tell us the questions that we need to ask and give us the important information, because we're trying to save ourselves time and money. We have kids to help, and we need to do it as efficiently and as effectively as we possibly can, right? That's sort of our banner, efficient and effective, because we don't have time to waste and we don't have money to lose. Not on this journey. I don't know anybody who does on any journey, but certainly not on an autism journey. We got no time, no money to waste, right? Okay. So lots of ways that you can interact with us here on the show is what I'm getting to, that you can give us information, you can ask us for information, you can ask questions of the experts, even on a day after they're not here, right? You can still ask questions for Misty Mackey. We also had Jonathan Tarbox, Dr. Jonathan Tarbox, with us on Friday, and he had some great information for us as well. Anytime you have a question for anyone, even if it's somebody who hasn't been on the show that you'd like to have ask a question, please, there are lots of different ways you can participate. If you're watching us right now on autism-live.com, you will see that it either says live or rebroadcast. If it says live, then that questions box that's there is active, and I can see that it's active right now. You can type in anything you want to do. You can even type in and say, hi Shannon, I'm watching you from this country. We love that when we know where you're watching from. You can hit enter and it shows up magically right here in front of me. So that's a wonderful thing that you can do. If you are watching and it says rebroadcast, well, The questions box is not going to be active, but there are lots of other ways that you can participate. And by the way, this goes for any of the other ways that you could be watching us. So you can email us. Let's go through some of the different ways. You can email. We get your email. We'll cover your question on the next available live show, and we will send you back a typewritten response. I'm a little bit backed up on those, so you got to make sure you give me a couple of days, right? I'm working on it because it takes me a couple of days to get your answer, and then I'm a little backed up. But we will get the answer to you. And I'm trying. We're in the process of hiring an intern. If anybody knows anybody who wants to intern to help us to expedite getting those things back out to you. Also, you could phone us. This is it's like an instant gratification way, right? You can phone into the studio. They can patch you directly into the studio, or you can talk to somebody outside the studio. I know some of you are shy, don't want to be on the air. That's okay. It is not your responsibility to be on the air. It is your responsibility to ask the questions that you want to answer to, and we're going to find a way to get it to you. If you call and we're not in the office, you will leave a message and we will get back to you. It's that easy. You can also Skype in. More and more of you were Skyping into the show. We even Skyped internationally last week and loved that. So wherever you are, you can Skype into the show. That does need to be during the live hours, and remember that we're 9 a.m. to noon Pacific Standard Time. But that's a really inexpensive, because for a lot of you it's free, way to converse with an expert. Everything we do here, it's free. So, and Skype is free for a lot of you. All right. So Skype is another way that you can get a hold of us. You can also talk to us on Facebook, and we're loving more and more of you are liking our page. We really, really appreciate that because we are the new guys on the block. And you can also answer the question of the day on the page and interact with other people, which is a really great way to find out information and build your support group. We always talk about having a local support group and a global support group. So sometimes somebody will write in and you'll go, man, I so agree with that. My child is like that too. And you got a new friend that you can talk about things with. We can't have enough people in our corner, right? Enough people who get it. Because let's be honest, as soon as autism comes to live in your house, your world separates into people who get it and people who don't get it. So can't have enough people who get it in your life, right? More and more of them. All right, you can also tweet with us too. I'm fairly new to Twitter, but I'm learning, we're all learning, and we look forward to interacting with you on Twitter. Those are just some of the ways that you can get a hold of us, but I mentioned that there are other ways to watch us. You might be watching us on autism-live.com right now, but want to remind you that there are lots of ways to watch us. You can be watching us on blip.tv. These ways are particularly great for pausing, rewinding, fast forward, searching a topic, so that if you miss an episode, because let's be honest, I know that you aren't just sitting there glued to your computer screen 3 hours a day, because you've got kids to raise and kids to help. But this is information that is here for you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can find it on Blip TV. You can also find it on our YouTube channel. Search a topic, look and see, you can subscribe, and if you just love Dr. Jonathan Tarbox and the things that he talks about with research, then you can find every single interview that we've done with Dr. Tarbox. If you're interested in finding out about toileting, you can search and say, who are all the different experts that Shannon has had in talking about toileting? And how sometimes it just takes like the third person before you get it. Somebody can say something, and it's the same thing, but somebody finally says it in the way that you go, okay, I get that having to do with my child. So check that out on YouTube. You can also download us for free on iTunes. What a lovely thing. We appreciate any and all reviews on iTunes. And you can also be watching us on Ustream. So we thank all of those different providers for giving us spaces, and want to remind you, if there's a place that you would like to see us that we're not currently there, it's probably because we don't know about it. So would you do us a favor and write to us? You can email to us and tell us what service you use, and we'll be happy to check that out. All right, so those are all the ways that you can get in touch with us, and now it is time to move on to the jargon of the day. This is the time of day when we take on one word, one phrase, one anagram, and dissect it First, we give you an actual definition, which sometimes gets us no closer to understanding, right? Because a lot of times there's more jargon in the definition than there was in the actual word, and you go, yeah, no closer. So that's why we also give you a working definition, something that kind of scales it down, puts it in more, hopefully, easily understood language, and something that you can start to apply to your individual child. If you don't get it the first time around, again, don't worry. These terms are sometimes, it really takes being able to see it in your individual child. But if you hear it enough times, and by the way, this is how we teach our kids too. We take things and segment them into little packages, make it as understandable and as reinforcing as possible. And the children aren't going to get it the first time, right? But we give them more and more opportunities. So you'll see we go back over these terms and we use them throughout the day and keep explaining them so that eventually it becomes a part of our repertoire. We begin to understand it and can apply it to our child, and we hear an expert say it and we go, yep, no, I got that. I know exactly what that means. And then we start using the terms. It's like turning to the dark side. I hear myself use the jargon terms now and I go, well, who just said that? Who just said that? These are not my terms. But you know what? We have to make friends with it. We have to. It makes us more efficient, more effective. And that's the goal, right? Okay, so today's term, it's a favorite. You ready? Manding. All right, so what does manding mean? I know it sounds like a Barry Manilow song, right? Okay, manding is a type of verbal behavior that is controlled by a motivating operation. Yeah, see already. Deprivation or an aversive state, and is followed by specific reinforcement. The mand specifies its own reinforcer. Isn't that useful? I know, the first time I looked at that, I was like, well, that is just as clear as mud, isn't it? Now I know what manding is. I can go home. All right, manding, our working definition is requesting, demanding, or asking for something. So think about mand, and it sounds a little like demand, right? Demanding something. So when your child requests something or asks for it in any way, that is manding. All right, that makes a little bit of sense, right? Well, in the beginning, when we start to work with a child, one of the first things that people are going to look at is how much is the child manding. So is the child pointing to the refrigerator to ask for milk? Are they pointing to the cookie? Are they going, Are they reaching up their hands and going, when they want to be picked up, right? That is a form of manding, right? So your mind goes, oh, wait a second. Okay, how much is my child manding? And it doesn't have to be vocal, like even is vocal, right? It can be pointing, it can be, some sort of gesture, it can be sign, but is the child at any point indicating what they want? That is manding. We want for manding with a child, I think it's some crazy number. We had Sue Cho in not long ago and talking about manding, and I think she said that a typical 2-year-old is supposed to be manding like 1,000 times a day or some crazy number like that, that just absolutely exploded my head because I had a child with autism, right? And I was lucky when my son started ABA therapy, I was lucky if my son was manding 5 times a day. And it was supposed to be like 1,000. But what they did when the Center for Autism and Related Disorders came into my home was they started a mand program where first they were keeping count of how often my child was manding. And I should pull out those papers to see how often it was in the very beginning. And then what they did was they put in a mand program, a mand lesson to teach my child how to mand. And they had goals of how many times an hour, how many times a day that they wanted him to be manding. And they were, I think that across a session, like a 2-hour session, they were wanting him to mand 200 times an hour in the beginning, which would be 400 times in a 2-hour, right? It sounds overwhelming to me. However, they quickly were able to get, because they made it reinforcing enough, and we'll talk more about that later on when we do our language tip, but they kept upping it and upping it and upping it. Now, the wonderful thing about manding and teaching those functional communication skills. And don't, if you're thinking to yourself, well, but my child's not talking. That's the whole problem. Remember that manding is any kind of requesting. And we're going to talk later on about how to start and how to look and see where the child is to figure out, where do you start with manding. But the great thing about manding, and the reason why we want to increase manding and get it to that really, really high number, is the more a child mans, typically the less they tantrum. Yep, I just said that. Let me say it again. The more a child mans, the less they tantrum. Now, why is this? Is this some kind of magic trick? And you can actually see this on their charts. This is one of the many reasons why it's so important to chart progress. Because what happens is they'll start out and they'll start charting a child's behavior, challenging behaviors, right? And it's like really high up here, and their manding is really low down here. That's really typical. And we'll talk about why that is in just a second. But as the manding starts to go up, so the manding is down here and it starts to go up, we get what we call I call it the magic X. So the challenging behavior is here, the manding is here, and then all of a sudden they go like this and they cross. And the manding goes up and the challenging behavior goes down. So what's that about? How come that is? Well, if you can request something and get it, it takes a lot less energy than throwing yourself on the floor and screaming. And when you throw yourself on the floor and scream, sometimes you get what you want and sometimes you don't, right? But if you can ask for the cookie and you get the cookie every time, guess what? You don't have to fling yourself on the floor anymore. Isn't that the truth for all of us, right? If I could just ask for what I want instead of throwing myself on the floor, then I would be asking all the time, right? This is how it works with our kids. We get that incredible magic X. So manding, one of the first things we want to do, it helps to do a whole lot of things, by the way, too. But I think as a parent, it's one of those things where it's not immediate. I don't want to say immediate, but it's fairly quick. That if you can get the child manding, we saw a difference in a week. I'm just saying. If your life could be different in a week or 2 weeks where your child is on the road to having functional communication skills and communicating with you what they want, as opposed to tantruming, how different would your life be? We need, and by the way, when we start with a very young child who is 2 or 3, of course, manding is something really, really important. But if your child does not have functional communication skills and is 12, you would still start with manding. You would absolutely start with manding. And it doesn't matter whether the child is nonverbal. There are ways of doing this because we want all of our kids to have functional communication skills. And if you stop and think about it, we all have our hopes and our dreams, and we want for our kids to be verbal. We want them to be vocal, right? I don't know a single person who doesn't want their child to be vocal. But sometimes getting that functional communication skill is just a sidestep to getting to that. In other cases, the functional communication skills becomes the goal, depending on what the child's abilities are and what their issues are, if they are praxic or other things, becomes the goal. But even that is so huge. And when I hear a parent say, well, I just wish that he could tell me what he wants. Oh, it's so difficult until you have that. So manding, really, really crucial for that. All right, we're going to talk more about that throughout the day. Righty, and next up is our question of the day. We always have a question of the day. It's meant to get you thinking, get you talking to us. Really love it when you guys participate on Facebook. We're going to be checking in on Facebook a little bit later on today. So our question today is, how do you teach your child about holidays? Here in the United States, we have a big holiday coming in 2 days on Wednesday, the 4th of July. By the way, this is a big sensory nightmare holiday. We're going to be talking about that the next 2 days too. I don't mean to laugh, because when our kids have sensory issues, it's a very, very stressful time for us, right? But I find it really funny that here are these things that are supposed to be happy and joyous and wonderful, and yet what they end up being sometimes are sensory nightmares. Now, the 4th of July isn't completely different in this. You stop and think about any holiday. Holidays tend to be these sensory things. And so we have the potential for it to be torture for our children. we can turn that around, but we want to do it a very little bit at a time. It can be difficult because if you don't have fireworks every night of the year, systematically desensitizing a child to fireworks, a little on the difficult side. However, we can do it, and there are ways around it. So let's talk about how we teach our child about holidays for now, and then throughout the next 2 days, we are going to talk about strategies to help us and to help our kids when we have those sensory holiday things, how we can make the most of it, how we turn it into a lesson, a teachable moment. So it's really interesting to me. My kid is a concept kid, and so when he was little, we would go over the holidays over and over and over, and sometimes we would look at the calendar. And basically, one of the things that he appreciated very early on, because he's a concept kid, and I didn't quite identify, he kind of pointed it out to me along the road, but I just kept going over it and over and over it. Every once in a while, we'd sit and look at the calendar, because I was always afraid that my son was never going to have a concept of time and passage of time and what happens in what season. He just seemed so oblivious to it all. And I saw the other kids, like in kindergarten, being aware of the fact that it was Thursday, and on Thursday the music teacher comes. And I just would look at my child and think, my gosh, is he ever going to know it's Thursday, let alone that specific things happen on Thursday? And he did. We just didn't give up on it. We just kept, demonstrating it to him. And then, right when he would just about get it, then the schedule would change, right? But we would go through the calendar, and I'm going to talk a little bit later on about travel time and how we use travel time. But in the car's really useful to teach things, but we would go over the months of the year and talk about, because he tends to find holidays reinforcing, because we paired them with things to make it reinforcing for him. But we'll talk about the month and what the holiday of the month is. And he was the first one to point out to me, so there's really a holiday for every month, except August. Right? But, so that was how we began to teach about it, and that he would have to remember one thing about each holiday. It could be his favorite thing about the holiday, and I would say, what do we do on the 4th of July? And we still talk about those things to help him to mentally prepare. This morning as I was leaving, he was saying, wait a minute, is today the 4th of July? And I was saying, no, I told you that's not till Wednesday. And he goes, yeah, but isn't today Tuesday? I said, no, today's Monday, which, we all have that, right? What day is today? Is today Monday? Is today Tuesday? But he was excited about it. He's like, oh, okay. So on Wednesday, we got fun stuff coming up. And that took a couple of years to kind of pack into him, because we don't have the opportunities enough. But we can talk about it outside. But that's how we taught Jem about holidays, and he's still learning about holidays. But I'd love to know from you, how do you teach your kids about holidays? So write into us. You can tweet. You can write into us on Facebook. You can email or call in. How do you teach your child about holidays? We always have a topic of the day. And our topic today is, as if you couldn't have guessed already since we were talking about manding, teaching language. How do we teach language to children who aren't acquiring it in the neurotypical fashion? It's not impossible. It's just a different way of doing things. One of the things I saw on Facebook over the weekend, and I'm probably going to mess it up because I don't have it in front of me, but it was how they have the lovely memes everywhere and now on Facebook, and somebody had posted something that said, and I'm going to paraphrase, if the way in which we're teaching a child doesn't work, then we need to change the way we're teaching. And this is really the case with language with our children. I think all of us have taken for granted for how many centuries that, a child comes into the world and you do a couple of very simple things and the child just picks up language, that you don't have to have a formal teaching setting for the child to learn language, that they just do it. Except some of our kids don't. In fact, most of our kids on the spectrum don't acquire language in the way that typical kids do, neurotypical kids do. But that's okay, because we can teach it to them. It just means that we have to change our methods a little bit, and we can do that. We absolutely can do that. And then we're going to be able to teach them language. So we're going to be talking about that a lot today. And to that end, during today's show, we're going to have a success at school tip. I know that for most of us it's summer break, but this is the ideal time to be setting our kids up for success in the fall, because what we put in place now will get them ahead or caught up or whatever we want to be. We're also going to have a new A word today, and as I mentioned before, we're going to go over some of those funding tips for things that you can do to help yourself bridge that gap of when you have insurance getting that deductible met every year. So really important stuff. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to have the stress tip of the week. So stick with us. We're going in a second. We're seriously, we are. Stick with us.
I'm Adele Nadowski, Director and Co-Creator of Skills. CARD e-learning is an online tool that has been developed by the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. CARD e-learning is the training that is delivered to the ABA therapists at CARD to train them on the principles of applied behavior analysis and to equip them with the knowledge they need to essentially deliver the ABA-based techniques during their therapy with the children that they work with. ABA has been proven scientifically to be the most effective intervention for children with autism. At this point, even the Surgeon General has come out with a statement suggesting just that. So we know that this is something that children with autism definitely need if they're going to improve and live the lives that we're hoping that they're going to be able to live. By being able to train people on this one particular method that we know works, and to be able to have all of your staff within your school settings on the same page, it allows you to take more of a multidisciplinary approach, and there's definite consistency going on within the team. It makes sure that every person involved with that child's treatment program, including the speech and language pathologist, the occupational therapist, the teachers, the aides, all of these individuals to be able to be trained so that they can all work together effectively with the child. Parents that are using CARD e-learning can use it either to train themselves, and then after having done that, they can implement different techniques with their child in order to teach new skills. But oftentimes parents might also be working either with an ABA provider, with a school, or they may have even hired their own therapist to deliver the intervention techniques. So CARD e-learning can be used either to collaborate with your school. It can also be used to train the therapists that are coming to the home of the parents, or it can also be shared with the ABA provider so that that provider can find out about it and perhaps implement it within their organization and train their staff. You can also do reporting for your organization. So you can actually look and find out which teachers are progressing, what their quiz scores are, and actually we can give you reports as well that will help you to compare the different teachers and their performances. CARD e-learning is really simple to use. You can log on to this as long as you have a computer, that's all you need, and an internet connection. And you can work on it any time of the day, anywhere that you're at. When you log on, you realize that right away. First of all, on the top of the page, there's a navigational tutorial. It's a how to use this page button. Simply by watching that video, it'll all kind of unfold in front of you, and it becomes extremely self-explanatory. CARD e-learning has 9 modules, and you can basically go through those at your own pace. You're going to be watching videos that are kind of like a storyboard with narration, but in addition to that, there's many different video clips of therapists actually implementing the techniques that are being described within the storyboard that you can also watch. And then of course you're able to pause, you're able to type notes right directly underneath the video that you're watching. You can save your notes, you can review them, and between each module you do take a quiz. And once you pass that quiz, you can go on to the next module. And then after you complete all of them, you have a final exam. And by completing the final exam and passing with a score of 85% or better, you will be given a certificate of completion. Let me show you how easy it is to use CARD e-learning.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod, and we are webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. I promised you the stress tip of the week, and that is exactly what we have for you. And we talk from time to time about how stressful this journey is, right? Because it's a undeniable part of this. And as you are going through this journey with your child, you have to. Did you hear me? I said have to. This is our absolute necessity. Find a way to manage the stress, because I personally can tell you what happens when you don't. Remember, we talk all the time about how this is a marathon, not a sprint. And I know as a parent, I got into this mode of, well, we're going to do what we have to do, and we're going to make it work, and we're going to bend to make the fit, and we're going to jam the square peg in the round hole, and we're going to make it work because failure is not an option, right? And I got really, really militant about it. And it was like, well, whatever we have to do to make it work, that's what we're going to do. And I suffer constantly from that. Well, we're just going to do this today. We're not going to do this long term, but we're going to do this today, right? But the problem is that when you're running a marathon and saying, well, I'm just going to bend to make the fit, you're going to pay for it somewhere down the road. So I don't want you to make the same mistake that I made and that I still am working on, right? So we're all works in progress, but we have to manage the stress. Otherwise, what happens is the whole machine breaks down. And I have a friend who gives lectures about how, for a family, when you start on this journey, somebody has to be the project manager. That's what they call it. That sometimes that's the mom, sometimes it's the dad, sometimes it's the aunt or the grandmother, whoever, but somebody has to be the project manager for autism. Keep in mind that it's stressful for everyone. It's stressful for the person who's the project manager. It's stressful for the person who is not the project manager. It is stressful for the surrounding family. It's stressful for the child. It's stressful for the children who are not on the spectrum. It's stressful for the family dog. It's stressful for the fish and the parakeet too. But if we start with the project manager, and I'm guessing if you're watching, you're probably the project manager for autism. If it starts with you, then you're going to be in a place where you're going to be able to deal with more things, and you're going to be able to model the behavior for everyone else. And when the project manager's stress level is reduced, it automatically reduces the stress level on everybody else. So if you think for a second that your personal well-being and personal mental well-being and personal physical well-being is not paramount because you've got a child with autism, I need for you to step back for a second and know that many of us have been through this before, and we will all tell you to a person, it is so important that you be in a good physical and mental space, the best possible one you can be in. You're going to get more done, you're going to be more efficient, you're going to be more effective. So even if you can't do it for yourself, and I know how hard that is as a parent, right? We can be told over and over and over again, when you're on the plane and the oxygen masks drop, put your own oxygen mask first, because otherwise there's a possibility that you're not going to be able to help your child. But the parent in us goes, no, I really want to put the oxygen mask on the child first. But therein lies tragedy, right? You have to be safe yourself. They teach this in lifeguarding school. If you're trying to save a drowning person and they're struggling, and you have to back up, and so that they will calm down and that you can go in and save them, because otherwise lifeguards drown too. We can't have that. That would be failure. We cannot have that. So we must manage our stress. So how do we do this? Myriads of different ways, right? But one of the cheapest and most effective ways that we have is finding, even if it's a minute, to meditate a day. And I know we've talked about this before, but it bears repeating. Taking 1 minute. And I know what you're thinking. I have no time. I have no place. I have no quiet. It is not possible. But you got to find the minute. And it may be, there's at least 1 minute when your child is sleeping. There is. I know you're thinking, no, but not while I'm awake, right? But there's at least 1 minute when your child is sleeping, or we're going to talk about this more throughout the day, that being in the car is an ideal time for a lot of different things, because it is a time when your child is strapped into hopefully a 5-point harness that they cannot undo, right? And so that is a moment in which, even if it is that when you build in that you get into the car to go someplace, and we know that you got places you got to be, you got to get to OT, you got to get to speech, you got to get your child to the doctor's appointment, right? You got to get to the grocery store. You get the child into the car seat, which is exhausting enough as it is, right? Especially if they got the octopi arms and legs going on. You get them into the car seat, you get them strapped in to the car seat, and then you sit in the driver's seat and you take a minute. The world's not going to go away. And you might think to yourself, yes, but that minute I'm going to be late to OT. You know what? 1 minute of you centered and focused and relaxed is going to be better than you showing up, because it shows up on your child, right? Think about it for a second. You know I'm speaking truthfully here. When you're flustered and upset, your child is that much more flustered and upset. Take that minute when you sit down. Close your eyes, take 3 deep inhales, and picture snow on a canvas, or snow like a snow bank. Picture something for just a minute. Take the time. And, sometimes in the beginning, because you're so stressed, being able to take, ideally we want to work up to you having an hour. I know it seems crazy, but at some point we want you to have, but as your child gets better, guess what? The hour is going to show up. But we want you at some point to be able to do an hour, but that's really hard to do in the beginning when you're really stressed out. Really hard to do. Because if you take the time to relax, you're either going to go to sleep, or you're going to start to think about all the things you got to do, right? So that's why we practice, just like we do with our kids, 1 minute at a time. Take that 1 minute, close your eyes, 3 deep inhales, 3 deep exhales. Everything gets better after 3 deep inhales and 3 deep exhales. But picture just, if you have to picture the fuzz from a TV screen for a minute. We all need that white noise for at least a couple of seconds. By the way, when you take your child to OT, when you take your child to speech, those can also be times when I remember I didn't have this on board when my son was starting, but we would go, before we started ABA, there was about a 6-month period where they were sending us to an early intervention, and we would go there for OT, we would go there for speech, and we would go there for some group sessions with some other kids. It was traumatic for my individual child. He would do nothing but scream, but eventually they made my husband and I sit outside, and I did notice that one of the other parents would sit there and she would close her eyes and she would meditate. I did not have it enough together to do that, but I can tell you, even if it's for a minute, you put your child, you're there at OT, and your child's in front of you maybe doing something, and you're sitting on the side. Close your eyes for a minute. Somebody else is attending to your child. It's an ideal minute. You can tune out what's happening. I know it's hard, but just take a minute to breathe. It's going to help you to be healthier for the rest of the day, and it's going to help you in the long run. Then once you get a minute on board, then you can go for 2 minutes. Also, another time, if you can't do it in the car, and if you can't do it during OT or speech, one of the other ideal times is when you go to bed at night. That minute when you lay down and take just a minute. By the way, you can be doing a guided meditation. It doesn't have to be on your own. For some of you, I know it's just so hard to get yourselves down, right? But there are all kinds of free meditations that you can download on iTunes and other services like that. There are some that you can just go, Google free guided meditation. There are websites that put up a new one every day that you have to be on the website, but you can do that. When my son was doing therapy, eventually when I got on board with this, there was one site, and I'll have to see if I can find it now because I don't do that anymore, but he would be in therapy and I would have the video monitor there, and I would be listening on the video monitor, and I would lay down in the other room and do this guided meditation with the computer. You can do it right before you go to sleep, and sometimes that's the thing that gets you to sleep, so that you actually get the rest that you need. this is a marathon. And, you know, life is stressful as it is, but put autism on top and man, we're all over the line. It's not good. It's not good for our health, but we can manage it. Meditate, 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 and it's really got to be a daily thing. Take the time to be kind to yourself. Okay, we got to take a break, but when we come back, we're going to give the success at school tip for the week. So stick with us.
Hi, we're here today with Cecilia Knight, who is the Director of Training for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. And today I'm thrilled to have her here because we're going to talk about manding. What is manding?
Request that you would make of another person.
Why is manding one of the first things that seems to come up in most programs?
Okay. Well, a baby requests for his mother's attention by crying or by reaching. And so it's one of the first ways that you let another person know what you need. And then that other person reinforces you by either picking you up or giving you something to drink or something to eat. And so many of our clients aren't really good at that once we start a program with them. And unfortunately, many of them engage in inappropriate manding. Screaming, kicking, biting. And so what we're trying to do early on is no longer reinforce the inappropriate ways of asking and rather reinforce the appropriate ways of asking. And as we teach them an appropriate way to ask for, Mom, play with me, can I have juice, or, you know, even more simply, help, then we see those inappropriate demands decreasing and the appropriate demands increasing, because the child's wants and their desires aren't really changing, but we're teaching them the right way to get their needs met.
So manding doesn't have to actually be spoken. It can be nonverbal as well.
And that's exactly right. They could exchange an icon. And if I bring you an icon with a cup on it and hand it to you, and you bring me a juice cup, then we've made an exchange. And so there is what Skinner would call verbal behavior. You have reinforced my request for a cup or for juice.
So when we say verbal behavior, we're not talking about vocal behavior necessarily.
That's right.
It's just that it's a conversation of some sort.
What is reinforcing to the child? The demand is evoked by the child's desire or their need for something. So early on, we may arrange the situation where I know that they're interested in the juice and they're reaching for it. I may hold it back to just say juice or ja or whatever is appropriate for that child. And then as soon as they emit any sort of response, give a high level of praise and then immediately give them the juice. But what controls the demand is that specific reinforcer. So of course, if the child asks for a juice cup and you bring something else, then they're not being reinforced with what they asked to have.
Okay. What do you want?
Good job.
You say wafer, please. Wafer, please. Good talking. Thank you, Dad. Thank you, Daddy.
You know, it's interesting when you're out in public and you're around other children, and a lot of times, you know, you might see some behavior that you think to yourself, oh, okay, you know, it raises questions in your head. But what's always interesting to me is I can identify the children with autism by one thing: the parents talking to them and saying, the child says something and the parent says, good talking, and there's some other reinforcement that goes with it. That's when I go, oh, okay, you're a part of my club. And what a great thing, what a great way to recognize other parents when you're seeing a child being reinforced for talking. I think that's a really positive thing. Manding, really important, and we're going to be talking about that more today because our topic today is teaching language. However, our Success at School tip for today, it's that time of the day, that time of the week, is working during the summer on transitions. And I think it's a great time of year, if you haven't already asked your school who your child's teacher is going to be, now is a great time to ask. So do we know yet who my child's teacher is going to be? And you can say, because I want to be prepared. I want to be working on things over the summer. That's a really reasonable request. And you can also be asking so that you can be having conversations with a teacher to help them be prepared for your individual child, because we know that autism, once you know one child with autism, you know one child with autism, right? And there are things that you're going to be able to impart to your teacher that are going to help them to prepare to know how to deal with your child. But I don't think that we want to be putting teachers in a position where they're rearranging their day for our children, right? Quite the contrary. We want the teacher to tell us what their schedule for the day is, and we want to start to work on transitions at home with our child. Now, by the way, this is true whether your child is about to go into preschool for the first time, whether they're going into kindergarten, whether it's first grade, second grade, third grade, any grade that there are always going to be shifts in the schedule, right? So if your child is starting kindergarten, saying to the kindergarten teacher, so what does the day look like? Most teachers are going to be able to say to you, well, here is our basic framework for Monday, or here's our basic framework for every day of the week. When my son went to kindergarten, I remember that it was that he only went to half-day kindergarten, and up until about 10:30, they were in centers, and the centers would go 20 minutes or so. I think that's what it was. It might have been 15 minutes. But there was a specific amount of time that they would do different activities. So at one center, they would do an arts and crafts project, and then a bell would ding, and then they would move. There would be a discussion about here's what you need to do, pick up your materials, and then move to the next center. And the centers would change every morning, but there were still centers, and there was a specific time. So that was invaluable information that our kindergarten teacher gave us the summer before. Really great at your year-end IEP to invite whoever they think the teacher is going to be for the next year, or a representative from that grade level to let you know what the basic schedule is. Now, I think the older they get, the more flexibility a teacher has. So really important to know what the schedule of the day looks like. And we were able the entire summer before he went to kindergarten to be working with him and getting his body used to, you're doing one thing that's really enjoyable, and then we're going to ring a bell, and you're going to get about 30 seconds to pack that up and move and transition to the next thing. It wasn't this very cold shower when he got there on the first day of kindergarten. We had already built that into his schedule for that whole summer. Now, the activities were different, but that also helped him because every day the activities were different at home. Every day the activities were different at school as well. So he was already building in this expectation of flexibility. And we started, by the way, at home with all of the activities being preferred activities. So we built in that transitions were no big deal. And in the beginning, if we were painting and that was very reinforcing to him, and the timer went off, and he would have anxiety and he would cry and go, no, I'm painting. And we would just kind of deal with it and, let him have his emotions about it, but very quickly distract him with the next activity, which would be honestly more reinforcing. So if we went from painting, which was like reinforcing, right, to Legos, right? And then from Legos to eating something that some preferred food that he loved. But we were building in this sort of inner clock of the bell rings, I leave this thing, but I go on to something that's as good or better. And then over time, once he got through those transitions and could be successful moving from one activity that I love to another activity that I love or love more, and realizing I don't have to fuss over it, I'm going to get to come back to the painting eventually in my life, life is not over, then we could make things slightly less preferable and eventually get to the point where he was going from something he really loved to something that was really difficult for him. And it was okay. He would be still having difficulty with the thing that he was having difficulty with, of course, but he wasn't having difficulty with the transitions. Transitioning is a part of life. It's not easy. It's not really easy for any of us, right? But if we prepare our child and give them plenty of opportunities, they can go from activity to activity to activity. And I think one of the greatest disservices to our kids is if we don't help them with these things that are infinitely surmountable, right? It's unfair to the teacher, it's unfair to the child to have this expectation that we're just going to throw them in and they're both going to be able to figure it out. And what happens a lot of times is that as a result of a child not being able to follow the transitions, they get the IEP team says, well, they need to be in a more restrictive environment. And then the child loses out on all that interaction. The child loses out on all that being on pace and doing the standards and being with the neurotypical peers, and instead gets put into a sensory situation that's that much more difficult for them, where there's 5 kids stimming with them. It's just a disservice to them. We can get the transitions under control and set our child up to be in a place of being open to learn what's happening there instead of struggling with the structure. Do it now. Don't wait until 2 weeks before school starts. Start transitions now. Call the school before they all go out for summer break administratively and say, I want to talk to who the teacher is, or I want to talk to the lead teacher. I want a schedule because we're going to start to work on this at home. Even if it's 5th grade, there's a schedule, right? Get the child used to it. If your child is going to junior high school and you've got their schedule, or you could have their schedule, and this is when lunch happens, start having lunch then, and having these breaks between class, so that you set up your morning and go, all right, well, first we're going to go to the grocery store, and be gone the amount of time that first class is, so that you're building that structure in and having it repeated and having the transitions. It really will help them. Okay, it is time for the A word, and we have a new episode for you. I can't wait to see what's happening with Jack Riley today. This is the wonderful ongoing documentary that's being made here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. It's called The A Word. It follows a little boy named Jack Riley, who is about to be 3. It might even be this episode that he turns 3, but he was diagnosed at 2. He's been having therapy in his home for about 7-8 months now. He has a brand new baby sister who has just come home, and we are watching him grow, and there it is. We are watching him grow and learn and struggle, because sometimes as our kids are growing, they are going to struggle. Met anybody with a teenager? Yeah. Kids grow and they push boundaries, and it's tough for them. So let's tune in to see what's going on with Jack Riley this week. This is the A word.
You were over this. We did this like 5 months ago. I know, that's you. Hi, look.
Hi, look.
You can say hi.
Hi.
Say, I'm Jack Riley.
I Jack Riley. I got. Really? It's showtime.
It's showtime.
Sit down. I can eat.
Look what I have. Do you want to play with your rug?
The rug.
Whoa, you want to play?
Hard to play.
Okay,
Go
then
play,
you need to get your stickers. Do you want the rug?
What's the rug?
Okay, you need to sit here. No, you need to sit right here. Sit down. Sit right here. You need to sit here, buddy. No. Or else we have to go sit on the chair, bud. Come on. Sit up. Okay. You're gonna sit on the chair then, dude. Ready? Clap your hands. Good. See, that's one sticker. Touch your head. There it is. You have to sit on chair, There you go. Thank you. You got one sticker for that. High fives. Very good. What do you want after the one sticker? iPhone. Okay. Let's see. Touch your back. Very good. See? You got it. High fives. I'll get it for you, okay? Cool. He's been having a lot of non-compliance lately with the other girls too. So Most of our session might be compliance training today. It's basically asking him to do things he already does know, so he's successful. But just to get their focus back, by asking them to do things that they already do know, it kind of shifts their focus back on something else. And then I just bring in what I originally asked was to sit in the chair. And he was able to do it. I don't know if it's just, you know, his baby sister or it's just been lately. Okay, my turn. Okay, we're gonna get 5 stickers again. What do you want to do?
iPhone.
More iPhone? Okay, sure. Okay, ready? Stand up. Good job. Here's 1 sticker. Clap your hands. Good job. Touch your nose. Where's your nose? Good job. Touch your ears. Nice. 1 more. Sit down. Nice. Very good. Here you go. So I'll do that just a couple times just to get him back in the groove of things. Get back. What are you doing?
Pooping.
You're pooping? Oh, okay. You going potty?
Go in a party.
Are you going poo-poo?
I'll go in a party. You poo-poo.
You have poo-poo in your diaper?
Pooping your diapers.
Okay. Okay. I'm sorry, are you pooping? Oh, maybe it is. Okay. Are you all done? Okay.
One more baby.
1 more minute to go poop.
Oh, baby.
Yeah. Yeah, and then we're gonna get your dad, okay? Okay, we're gonna go see Daddy. Okay? And go show Daddy to say, Daddy, I pooped.
Daddy,
Go find Daddy. She's just doing it. No? Yeah. Yay! You said you pooped and you did!
You pooped, huh?
Yay!
That's really good. I'm really proud of you. Look at me. I'm really proud of you.
You're gonna be a star. You're gonna be a superstar. She was very fussy until right this second. That's Big Brother's girlfriend.
How are they doing together?
He mostly ignores her. Although he did have a little monologue yesterday where out of the blue he said, "Bless you, Lainey Grace." And then he said a few other things about her too.
I love you, Lainey Grace.
I love you, Lainey Grace.
Oh, that's sweet.
And he'll kiss her head and thinks that's funny because, of course, Mommy gives her big reactions to his kisses. She says, "Ooh, I like that kiss." So he likes to do it like 45 times. But most of the time, if you ask him what his sister's name is or anything about his sister, he pretends like he didn't hear you, which is fine. We're not in a hurry.
Jealousy to work out on, I think.
And we are very careful if he wants me to, whoever's got her, if he tries to get our attention or whatever. If we can, we give it to him. There's going to be plenty of times where we can't. So we're trying not to have her be the reason we have to say no. For now.
Success. It's been an eventful 1 hour since we've been here.
Exciting.
I know.
Jam-packed. This is going to be an exciting episode of it. There's baby, there's pooping, there's tantruming, there's everything.
Only the first hour, Suzanne.
I know.
See what the second hour will bring us.
Welcome back to Autism Live. If that edition of the A Word looks familiar to you, it is. We ended up showing last week's, and we're going to see if we can get this week's to you before the end of the show. But, you know, I think that everything always happens for a reason, right? And I think it's worthwhile to talk about again this week, this particular episode, because we see that this is a child who is having some challenging behavior. He's not complying in the way that he was before. That doesn't mean that he's lost the ability to comply. I mean, clearly we see that he's able to comply, but he's having some stuff going on. And you know, I think that as parents, there's a part of us that wants to understand constantly. Well, in this particular instance, we can completely understand, can't we? This is a little boy who's got a new baby sister who came home, and everything is going to be different from now on. And this has never happened to him before. He has nothing to relate it to, and he doesn't know that it's not the end of his world. He doesn't understand it. He doesn't completely get what's going on. And he's trying to make sense of it, just like everybody else is trying to make sense of it. I'm sure that his parents are acclimatizing to, okay, we're not getting the sleep that we once got, and we have 2 people to get in the car and 2 car seats and all these different adjustments that everybody's having to go through. It's a happy and joyous thing, but it doesn't make it any less challenging, right? Well, this week, excuse me, there's holidays that are going on, and people are going to get together, and people are going to come to your house. You're going to go to somebody else's house, or you're going to stay at home, and there's going to be fireworks going off. I know even in my neighborhood, the last couple, excuse me, over Saturday and Sunday, we were hearing fireworks every night going off. And it reminded me, I mean, now it was a non-event for my son, but when he was little, and especially we were in a condo we were in the middle condo, in a very, huge community that very into fireworks. And when he was little, it sounded like it was a war zone outside the house when it was the week of the 4th of July. It certainly wasn't just the 4th of July, but the week of the 4th of July. And I remember that the stress level would go up, and that he had some difficulties in that week because what he understood to be his world had changed a little bit. Now, for the fireworks, it doesn't last forever. It lasts for a week, but it doesn't make it any less difficult while it's happening during the week. But there is a part of it that as parents that we can say to ourselves, well, it's just going to be several days, got to get through it. We will survive this. When it's something that's permanent, like a new baby, you got to have a little different strategy to deal with things and make it easier for everybody. So having that awareness of, okay, here's a part at least of what's going on. And sometimes you just don't get to know. Sometimes your child is just going to be out of sorts, and you're going to look at all the different things that are going on. As Evelyn Gould, I can hear her in my ear saying motivating operations. You're going to look at those kinds of things, but you may not be able to pinpoint it. I'll never forget when my son was little, and he broke out into this terrible rash at one point. He just had all these red spots down his legs, and I, threw him in the car to take him to the pediatrician. This was before autism, and threw him in the car, took him up to the pediatrician and said, what is this? And she said, oh, well, it's probably a food allergy. And I said, oh, okay, so we're going to do this big elimination diet and figure out. And she said, yeah, I mean, you can try that, but the truth of the matter is you're probably never going to figure it out. And I said, what do you mean never? My child's going to break out in spots at any time, and I'm just never going to know the answer to it. And she said, yeah, it's very possible. You can try, but it's not life-threatening. He's going to break out into these rashes every once in a while. And the truth of the matter is there's so many different variables, you may never figure it out. That drove me bonkers. We did figure it out. It was strawberries. And he has strawberries, he breaks out into the spots. But I know a lot of people who, their kids will break out in rashes and they have no idea and still haven't sorted it out. I kind of got lucky, and I was really spastically diligent about it because it was making me nuts. But in any case, it's like that with behavior. Sometimes we're going to be able to figure it out, and sometimes you're just going to have this anomaly where your child has a hard day. We have hard days sometimes too, and we can't quite put our fingers on it, right? I want you to know it's not... I think it's a really good idea to look to see if you can figure it out. But sometimes it requires professional help to come and figure out what's happening with the behavior, especially if it's something that's really challenging behavior. If your child has one meltdown and you get through it and there's not a repeat of it, maybe you don't need to call in professional help for that. But if your child is having a meltdown a day or a meltdown a week, and it's debilitating and they're self-injurious or violent towards, it's time to call in somebody else, right? There's garden variety tantrums, and then there's meltdowns. We want to minimize the garden variety tantrums, and there's lots of things that we can look at to see. And this family, for the A word, they're trying really hard. I love the mom sitting there with the new baby, right, on the boppy, and doesn't that bring back memories? And she says, whenever he asks for our attention, we try to give it to him whenever it's absolutely possible. And whenever we're not dealing with a new baby, we're trying really hard to give him as much attention as possible, because we know there are going to be moments when we can't give him attention, right? So this is really clever antecedent modification thinking here. Before he gets to the point where he's like, nobody's paying attention to me, they're trying to shower him with lots and lots of attention, so that we're going to minimize the tantrums. We're still going to have an expectation that there's going to be some tantrums, right? He is a child, children have tantrums, and things in his world have changed. But notice that the therapist stays calm. She gives him a way to work out of it. He doesn't want to sit on the chair, right? But she's saying to him, well, you know, you got to. You got to. When she can't push it with the chair, she goes to something else that she knows he wants to do to get him back in the compliance groove. And then you notice he makes the leap from there to, okay, I'll sit in the chair. Because my life is easier when I sit in the chair and do what you asked me to do. Everything is better. I don't have to fight this anymore. You know, she's not being mean to him. She's just saying, okay, you want to work for the iPhone? 5 stickers. Touch your head. Touch your nose. Touch your back. Right? He's still having his emotions, but you see him, he's like, all right, I'll do it because I want the iPhone. We got to make it reinforcing enough for them is the key. But she's not freaking out that he's having a tantrum. She's not sitting there going, you know, why now? This is not the appropriate moment, right? Which is what everybody's feeling. We're all feeling that, right? But we're not putting voice to it and not putting action to it. Staying calm, going back to what the child will do, reinforcing them for it. That's, step 1, step 2, step 3. And then he gets back in the groove. We can do this. All right, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we are going to visit some of your responses to the question of the day: how do you teach your kids about holidays? So stick with us. Hi, welcome. I'm here with Sue Cho, and Sue, tell us what you do.
I'm a senior clinical supervisor, and so I provide supervision to children in some of our clinics, and I also am a trainer for CARD, and so I provide training for all the supervisors that are either learning to be a supervisor or are current supervisors, and I also provide workshop services to children all over the U.S., Caribbean, Europe, South Africa, and Asia.
Very cool. And you're here today to talk with us about teaching prepositions.
Yes.
Help us to know how we can teach this.
Okay, so when you're teaching prepositions, there are a variety of ways that you can teach it. When you're teaching your first several targets, you want to make sure whatever you teach has a distinct front and a distinct back. Probably go with simpler and then more complex when you're teaching your beginning targets. One way you can do it is always have the same item to use as your reference point. You can also do it where you're constantly changing your reference point. So maybe within a sitting, I decide now I'm going to use a truck, or I'm going to use a box, or I'm going to use a chair. But that also depends on how flexible the child you're teaching is with learning with multiple items. This lesson is actually a little more on the abstract side. So if you find that your child's having difficulty with lessons maybe such as attributes, that you may want to start off where you use multiple objects as your reference point. So I use a helmet, I use a chair, I use a car, but I never turn the position of the item.
Right.
And so once they learn if the item is in the same position where the object goes, then you can start turning your item or putting the child in a different position in relationship to the item.
So you start with receptive, though, where you're asking them to do it. They're not having to say anything, they just have to demonstrate their knowledge of it. Then how do you teach the expressive? How and when?
So what we do is then we'd probably work on manding so that the child can request for the position. Let's say the child wants a particular color, but we're not working on colors. We're actually trying to work on prepositions. So
Right.
I have a yellow block on the top. I have 2 white cars, but maybe there's a slight distinction, and they want the one that's in front of the helmet. So then they would have to say in front. So then they get the one that's in
see.
front.
Okay.
Okay.
Great.
Or when you're asking about tacting, at first I start off and I say, where is the block?
And the child says, on top. I have some children that actually have a really hard time learning it receptively. I try to make them motivated to ask for a position then.
And how do you motivate them to ask for the position?
You want to put things there that you know that they like.
It seems like one of the keys to this is having really preferred items to do the exercises with.
Definitely, definitely. Because they're more likely to pay attention too then.
Welcome back to Autism Live, where our topic today is teaching language, but we're also looking at the holidays and the sensory issues that surround the holidays. And our question of the day was, how do you teach your child about the holidays? And a couple of responses that you guys wrote in. Somebody said, just decorating the house and only with some holidays. I think she still doesn't understand them, LOL. And I think, it's really interesting to be around kids that don't have autism, let's put it that way, because they don't get the holiday thing either. It's, it takes many years before they start to go, oh, okay, this is something that happens on a regular basis. But when my son was little, we took a lot of time to decorate the house in lots of different ways, and whatever we did, we made it a teaching opportunity. So I mentioned the other day that when we were working on cutting, that he didn't find it reinforcing to just cut shapes out, right? But if we cut out shapes and turned them into like puzzle pieces, so for instance, when we were doing Halloween, for instance, we would cut out a circle that was the pumpkin, and then we would cut out triangles to make stems and eyes and the teeth, and so that he could paste them all together. And suddenly he was much more interested in cutting out those shapes, and we would make all the pumpkins and we would stick them up all over the house, and we would make ghosts and witches and all the different things for witches' faces. So the oval for the witch's face, a triangle for the witch's hat, and then another oval for the brim of the hat, and circles for eyes, and rectangles for mouths. I mean, you can really, and we would talk about what shape it was and what color it was and what it symbolized for the mouth. He didn't understand that it was symbolizing for the mouth, right? But we would say, what shape shall we do for the mouth? And then, we would come up with different shapes. It was a really creative way to get him to cut and work on shapes and work on color. And we always made it a project when he was little. I have to say that his age, we are not doing that kind of thing anymore. And I sort of feel like it's a missed opportunity because he's just on that cusp of, a couple more years and he's just going to be so not interested. And he's a little bit interested now. So for things like 4th of July, we did red, white, and blue, and anything that we could think of. We did streamers on his bicycle, all those different things that we can do. And as your child ages, you talk about different things. And I think, honestly, instead of the decorating now, the time that we spend are talking about, well, why do we celebrate this holiday? And does everybody celebrate this holiday? And how do people celebrate this holiday in a different way? And do other countries have this kind of holiday, but they call it something else, and putting it in historical context for him? But always taking it as an opportunity to talk about different things. I love, and we are going to talk about this more later on, I love my time in the car with my son. And I always have. I think in the beginning, because my son was so busy all the time, he was constantly in motion. So to get him to do anything, and to get him to sit still for a minute was really, really difficult. And I'm really just now starting to understand how different he was than other children in terms of that constant motion. Because I've been hearing other parents talk about it and saying, you don't understand, my kid was always moving. And I'm thinking, yeah, well, my kid was too. Wasn't that normal? And it's not for our kids to constantly be in motion. But one of the things that would happen is when my son would be in his car seat, again, in that 5-point harness, we could I could point things out. I could have teaching moments with him that I couldn't always have. Now, do we want our kids to be strapped down all the time? No. But in the course of the day, we have places that we have to go and things that we have to do. And now my son, he's big enough and tall enough. He has no car seat restraint anymore. He just has the seat belt. And we were doing our errands and running around yesterday and going to the farmer's market and going to our community garden spot. Excuse me. And we were having conversations. And here's how our conversation went yesterday. And this is the little boy that wouldn't respond to his name at 3, okay? And he said to me, Mom, what is the difference between knowledge and intelligence? Okay? This is what we talked about yesterday. And I'm going to well up because that's exactly the kind of thing that I remember thinking when he was diagnosed. Okay, these are the conversations we're never going to have. What's the difference between intelligence and knowledge? And it was a lovely conversation about what the difference is between, and what does that mean to him, and what does that mean for his life, and does he want to be just intelligent or just knowledgeable or both? And and I was making the point to him, intelligence is something that is amazing. It's being able to take facts that and put them together and arrive at something that can change the world. And he said to me, well, that's what I want to do. I want to be somebody who makes a difference and changes the world. And we were talking about inventors, and it mushroomed into this much bigger conversation. And I'll be honest with you that sometimes I find places to drive a little bit with, because it's still the place where I have the best conversations, because everything else is minimized, right? It's not that there's no other stimuli, but, and he has a DS, right? He can be playing a DS in the car, but there are a lot of times that I say, no DS on the way there. You can do DS on the way back. And we set those boundaries, because then he's involved in his own thing. Although those things are not always bad. Yesterday he was playing a computer program, and it was all about geography. And it was awesome, except that it was taxing Dad and I. He's up in the computer room and he's like, Mom, what country is the Ganges River in? And I'm going, I don't know. But I'm learning. It's a geography lesson for Mom. So anyway, I digress greatly. Back to holidays. Great time to talk about it, though, in the car. Another person who says, I have been doing YouTubes of fireworks on the stereo, nice and loud, controlled by the safety of the computer, so it won't be so intense on Wednesday night. What a great idea. Showing fireworks so that the kids can get excited, and playing it in the house, and gradually, systematic desensitization. We were talking about how difficult it is, but this is one great way of being able to do it. So gradually turning up the volume so that they can appreciate how loud it is. I think it's really great too with kids to give them something to do. I am a huge firework fanatic, love fireworks, but I like to be noisy during fireworks. I like to say ooh and ah. And anytime that I'm around children, any children, I always say to them, okay, so here's what we're going to do during the fireworks. When we see the fireworks, we're going to say ooh, and then the next one we're going to say ah. So when it explodes, this is what fireworks like. It's applause for them. We don't clap for every firework, but a firework goes up and we're all going to say ooh, and then the next one goes up and we're all going to say ah. Well, everybody gets to laughing and everybody around you thinks that you're nuts. But what happens is that, in the beginning, kids don't necessarily think that fireworks are reinforcing, right? But if they say ooh and they say ah, eventually one goes off and they go ah, right? And they're excited about it. So give them something to do. It will help. When we have a replacement behavior, it helps for everything to go easier. So it's something for them to do. It is a replacement behavior, and I think it makes it funner for some people. And people usually point and laugh at my family and the people I'm with, because I expect everyone to do it so that I'm not the only idiot screaming my lungs out going, ooh, ah. Okay, so there are things that we can do to make this more fun. You may choose to stay home. And if you do, please know that that is okay. If you are not, Evelyn Gould always talks about it may be a yes day for you, or it may be a no day for you. If you are not in a place where you're prepared to deal with the things that you might have to deal with your child on the night of fireworks, you don't have to go. It does not make you a bad parent. I would say that part of how you can make yourself feel better and not feel excluded is to say to yourself, but you know what? We're going to work on this so that next year we get to go. I loved having the milestones of different things that would happen, and in particular the holidays, so that I would think to myself, well, where were we last year at this time? And to think, well, we're so much better than we were last year. That was really important to me. And to think, where do I want to be next year? And what kinds of things can I be doing so that next year this goes smoother and that this is more enjoyable for him? So wherever you are this year, accept what is and look at it and say, this is where my child is this year. I hope to be here next year. Even if you have like a 5-year out plan and say, and in 5 years, I want to be able to go to the fireworks and sit on the blanket with my child and know that my child's going to enjoy it and my child's not going to run away and my child's not going to have a tantrum because of these loud noises. And you can work towards that. It's amazing how fast it goes. While you're in it, it feels like time is inching along, but trust me, you're going to blink and you will be that 5 years down the road. That's what happened to us. But if you have it in your mind and you have it in your heart, here are the things that we're working on, and you have a method of working on them, which, we had awesome ABA therapy through the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, and now we use skills at home. Can't tell you enough about how great that is to help you to build these skills in your child. It happens a little bit at a time, a little increment at a time, and you end up looking back and going, wow, how did we get here? How did we get here? A lot of hard work, but we got here, and it's kind of miraculous. So in any case, I'm told that we have the new episode of the A Word. So I want to see what is happening with Jack Riley this week. So let's take a look and we'll talk about this episode. This is the A Word.
Sun's coming up.
How do you spell apple? Jack?
A-P-P-L-E.
We went to the mall last night and got him some new shoes, and he rode the carousel, and I watched him for like a half hour, and you would never guess he wasn't like every other kid in there, except he was smaller than a lot of them. They run around with
That's so funny.
reckless abandon.
So funny.
That's so funny.
Hey, what color do you want? Look, I have green, yellow, and pink. What color?
Yellow.
So what do you say?
Yellow.
Yes, you can. Close. There we go.
Oh!
Uh-oh. Should we make him stand? Should we make him jump? Here, let's make him jump. Ready? Boink. Uh-oh. Look, what is that? See, it's a footprint.
It's a footprint.
It's a footprint. Cool, you want to do it again?
Take it.
While Jessica and Jack Riley are playing with Play-Doh, they are working on his fine motor skills. They include pincher grasp for picking up food, rotating the wrist for clasping and opening the door. Having fine motor skills are needed for daily living tasks.
Oh, coolness. Wow.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday. Whose birthday is it? Say it's my
It's my
birthday. Say birthday.
birthday.
Say it's
It's my birthday. It's my birthday.
yeah. How old are you?
It's my.
I'm
3.
Yep, you're 3. Do this. Say 3.
3.
1, 2. Look. 3 fingers. Look. Right here. Look. 1, 2,
3.
3 fingers.
5 fingers.
Yeah, well, yeah, technically you do have 5. What is that?
A rabbit.
He's wearing a blue
Hat.
and a
Green.
hat and a
Red hat.
hat and a, oops! He's not wearing a hat.
Yellow hat.
Yeah, it's a yellow hat. Red.
Red shirt. Blue shirt. Yellow shirt. Green shirt.
Yeah, oops! He's wearing it upside down. It's
It's a hippo and dog.
good. It's
It's a rabbit and frog.
good.
It's a pig and cow.
Very good.
I have a question for you. Why is tacting important?
Tacting is important because it helps with language and conversation too. When we first start off, we just have him identify labels.
It's a ladybug.
And then we move into frames, like adding article adjectives to it, like it's the dog. What is it? Say it's. Yeah, it's a chicken. And then now we're having him add two objects. So he has to say it's a blank and a blank.
It's a pig and cow.
Very good. And then we'll move on to like add adjectives in front of the words too. So like what he does already, he'll say like it's purple socks, it's a red shirt.
Yellow suit. Blue suit. Red suit.
Just to help expand his language skills a lot more. Let's go, Jack Riley. You want to copy Susan? That's hilarious. That's so funny. You guys are so funny. Look at you guys.
Are we buddies? Are we twins? Here, give me your hand.
You guys are so funny. What are you doing, Jack?
Are we sitting?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you are thirsty.
Let's get you some water.
So cute. You even brought the chair over and everything. That's funny. Come on, let's get some milk, Jack. Say, come on, Suzanne.
Close yourself.
Okay, let's go.
You are
Cow.
too much laughing and giggling in here. That's a good thing.
Okay. So happy that that's our episode this week because we're talking about the importance of language and teaching language. And so much to talk about there. A couple of different things. I want you to consider, and this is the birthday episode, that it's his birthday. He is turning 3. And it does not escape my notice that my child started showing symptoms at the same age that this little boy started showing symptoms right after his 2nd birthday. And so here we have these two children on these two paths, right, that his parents noticed, and they got access to the help that they needed right after his 2nd birthday. They were in denial too, didn't think that this was what this little boy had, but they noticed that, he was having difficulty with some things, and they thought, well, surely it can't be autism, because he wasn't yet 3, so it's really hard to notice a lack of language acquisition at that point. And a lot of people poo-poo you. But they got the help that they needed, and they followed their instinct and kept asking until somebody looked and said, no, this is an autism diagnosis and you need to get right on it. So they started their intervention before he was 2.5. Now, my son, we saw those same things. We got the diagnosis at 2.5, but we didn't start ABA until 2 weeks into his 3rd birthday. And so, but we have children that, all kids are different, but similar skill deficits, right? But here at his 3rd birthday, he's saying, I'm 3. I'm Jack Riley and I'm 3. And he, it's a yellow hat, and saying these full sentences. For my son, and we did do other, we had a kind of therapy that the state had put us in that was an early intervention program that was not ABA based, and they were getting my child to do 1-word mans. That's what he was able to do by the time he reached 3. So in the same 6 months that I was doing, whatever, my son was able to say 1-word mans. He was not able to say his name on his 3rd birthday, and he was not able to say that he was 3, let alone saying I'm 3. So differences there, and my child was that much further behind Jack Riley at this point. And started ABA though, and very quickly worked to get himself caught up so that he went to neurotypical kindergarten. But I bring that up because last week our entire topic was EIBI, Early Intensive Behavior Intervention. And, whenever you start, that there is a good time to start, and that now is the best time to start, right now, if you haven't already. And that just shows you the difference of, I really think that at this point he's had 8 months, and what an 8-month difference can make on that third birthday. If your child is already 5, let go of, I'm sitting here and I'm having emotions about it going, why didn't I, let go of it. It's past, it's time to move on. It's what do I need to be doing for the 9-year-old that I have now? Not the 3-year-old and the 2.5-year-old back then. Yeah, it's emotional, but we all have to have that emotion and have it separate from the taking action part, because now is the moment. And take a look at what this child has accomplished. You see in the beginning when she's saying to him, okay, which one of the Play-Dohs do you want? Do you want the yellow one, you want the green one, or you want the pink one? And he says, yellow. And this is the little boy who, if you watch the early episodes, and you should, you guys, you should go back and watch the really early episodes to see how far this child has come. And they're trying to, and he would say, that-o, and that-o, and they would reward him for that, rewarding that approximation, which is so important. If we don't reward the approximation, we won't see that the skill will grow. But here he is, he's 3, and he's saying yellow in a way that I think that anybody would understand. There are other words that he says that, I don't understand, and you may not understand, but the people who are close to him are understanding and reinforcing, and his diction is improving. But you notice they were working on Play-Doh, right? A very reinforcing activity for some of our kids, and they were working on fine motor skills. But not only were they working on fine motor skills, while they were there, they were also working on manding. They were also working on colors. They were also working on desensitizing him from his food issues, because they're making food with the Play-Doh. So you want to talk about power packing and activity and working on a bunch of things at once, and being efficient and effective. What a great way to do. They're working on manned frames, so he wasn't just saying, when she says, what do you want? He wasn't just saying the one thing. He was saying, I want yellow, right? Then they get into talking about the fact that it's his 3rd birthday and trying to help him to do the 3 fingers. Now, here's what I found really interesting, is that she's trying to put the 3 fingers up for him and saying 3 because you're 3. You have 3 fingers because you're 3. And what does he say? I have 5 fingers. This, you guys, is the beginnings of conversation. That is interverbal right there. That is the beginnings of conversation. This is the beginnings of generalization. That's a moment that we could just go back and watch 1,018 times, because up until now, they've been saying a lot of things to him and repeating things to him and prompting him to say things. And sometimes he says his own things that's within the context. But this is the first time that I have seen, and he's probably done it before this, probably not the first moment. How lucky would that be to catch that on video? Because the filmmaker only comes once a week, but she said something and he corrected her with his knowledge. I have 5 fingers. And she says, yes, technically, yes, you do have 5 fingers. It wasn't what she was talking about. She was saying you put up 3 fingers because you have 3 fingers. But this is the beginning of statement, conversation. It's brilliant. That's huge, huge progress. Then you notice he's going through and he's looking at the books, and he is using his adjectives and saying it's a yellow hat. And she's not having to prompt him. She's pointing to it, and he's saying it's a yellow hat. He's not only tacting, and we're going to talk a lot about tacting tomorrow, so I'm going to leave a lot of that for tomorrow, but he's putting an adjective in front of it. He's building things on. And that's how we teach language, a little bit at a time. And it seems like, man, how are we ever going to get there? How on earth are we ever going to get there? But you do. You add on and add on and add on. And they generalize and they generalize and they generalize, and suddenly you have a child who's talking like nobody's business. I love a great example there of using books in a way. A lot of times people think, well, we sit down with a book and we're going to read the book. There's so much more you can do with a book than read it, right? And it's great to read books to our children, but it's also great to, excuse me, sit down and use it for tacting and pointing things out in the book. He's turning the pages and he's not reading what the hippo's doing. She's pointing to it and he's identifying the animals. It's a hippo. And originally they would just have labeled and said hippo, but now he's getting the frame of it's a hippo, right? And so he's starting to say it's a chicken with a red shirt. It's fabulous. And building two things together. It's a hippo and a frog. Because eventually he's going to do that with colors too. For the longest time they've been showing him colors and saying, what color is it? And he's been saying it's red. Well, now they're going to start to show him something that's red and blue, and he's going to say it's red and blue. Adding on little at a time until you get this big thing. And they talk a little bit about why tacting is so important. We're going to talk more about that tomorrow because I think that's our jargon of the day tomorrow. But did you love the moment when and that's actually the filmmaker who was sitting with him on the windowsill, and she said, what are we doing? And he didn't quite know how to classify that right. Because, he's building language. And so when she sees that he doesn't get it, she says, are we sitting? And what I loved was that he nodded his head. For a lot of our kids on the spectrum, nodding your head for yes is a huge, huge milestone. Huge. So we saw true beginnings of conversation, and we saw nonverbal gesturing communication too, which is, I got to be honest with you, often just as important in a child's development as that vocal verbalization of the stuff for the conversation. Really lovely to see this 3-year-old. And I know I would give anything to be able to travel back in time and have my 3-year-old at this point. That's not going to happen. And it's really okay because my 9-year-old is exactly where he should be. But if you have a child who is younger than 3 and you're hemming and hawing and saying, I don't know, this is the reason why you should be doing this. Absolutely. Progress is going to be different for all of our kids, but let's get in there as early as possible, All right. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we are going to take on teaching manding. We're a little bit behind, so we got a lot to catch up on, but we're going to talk about how we actually teach manding, so stick with us.
Hi, I'm here today with Cecilia Knight, who is the Director of Training for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. And she's going to talk to us about something that I'm not entirely clear on, tacting.
Tacting is when you make a comment on the environment, and then another person may reinforce that with non-specific reinforcement.
Can you explain to me what the difference between a tacting program is and an expressive labeling program?
In an expressive labeling program, typically the therapist holds up a card, maybe with a turkey on it, and the therapist would say, what is this? Referencing the picture. And the child would respond, turkey. The child is labeling the item. With a tact, it's a comment on the environment. So it can be evoked by a smell. So if I walk into the house and I smell Thanksgiving dinner, I can say, turkey. Or if I hear gobble, 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 I can say, that's a turkey. So it's a comment on the environment, which is different than just naming the item.
How do you get a child to comment on the environment? That's got to be hard.
It is. We use different prompts. Most of the time we use vocal prompts. For example, we may look through a book and point to the picture of an item and say, oh, look, it's Nemo. Say, Nemo, and then reinforce the child for responding. Or we may say, what do you see? Say, Nemo. And then eventually we would want to fade our point away. So I may say, look, Nemo. And then the child is referencing that and then also saying, that's right, I see Nemo. And then later fading completely away so the picture of Nemo itself evokes the comment. If we're working on something auditory, maybe we have a cow on the table and we play the environmental sound in front of them, maybe give them a vocal prompt to say, it's a cow, and the child may say, it's a cow. And then we might fade the visual of the cow and they just hear the sound. And we prompt them by saying, say, it's a cow, or I hear a cow, and then eventually fade until the sound itself evokes the comment. The goal is to get towards spontaneous tacting, where the child can walk around and comment on the novel things in the environment that he hears or sees. And so that's a great way to sort of bridge to that point. Tacting is really important to get to higher level lessons of interverbal behavior. Commenting on things that are private events, or commenting on things that I can't see that you're feeling, like your stomach hurts. But it's important to have those tacts in place so you can get to those later programs.
Welcome back to Autism Live. It is time for us, I've been promising this to you all morning long, to talk about how do we teach manding. It's going to be different for different children, right? But one of the things that we want to work on from the start, principle number one with ABA, is making it reinforcing. If we go back to our definition, because this is our jargon term for the day, what is manding? It's when the child requests or demands the thing that they want. And if you remember in the actual definition, it said that the reinforcer is specified by the mand. What that means is that the thing that they, in this way, it makes it so much easier because the thing they ask for becomes the reinforcer. So if the child is asking for the cookie, that's what they get reinforced with, is that they got the cookie. The child asks for the piece of candy, the child gets the piece of candy, and in that way, asking for it became reinforcing. You got what you wanted, right? So for a lot of other things at ABA, we're trying to figure out, okay, what's actually reinforcing enough to make this behavior happen more often? Going back to principle number one, in order for any behavior to be maintained, for it to happen again and again and again, it has to be reinforcing. So in this respect, manding is easy in that the child asks for something and we give it to them. Now, what's hard is that sometimes if they're not specifically using the label for it, sometimes we're not 100% sure. We have to make sure that we're staying as patient as possible. So when the child is going, and it's not clear to us, we need to start asking questions and going through. I can remember the phase where we would tap things and saying, is it the juice that you want? Is it the cookie you want? And a lot of times you will see the tantrum happen in that moment because the child is like, I'm being as clear as I can be, why don't you just give it to me, right? But in that moment, it's a great teaching moment, because if you're there with them and saying, which thing is it, they're gonna have to get clearer in order to get the thing that they want, right? So in the beginning, when we're teaching manding, I think we gotta stop and take a little bit of an assessment and figure out, where is your individual child? I really recommend that you not try to do this completely on your own, that Skills is wonderful for this. This is a wonderful online tool that you can use, and you answer a bunch of questions about your child's current abilities, what they can do now. The system is very smart, and so it looks at that and says, here are a list of lessons to choose from, and you can start from the earliest one and be starting in the most appropriate moment. So I really recommend that you do that. Give you a couple of examples. If you have a child who is making noises, right, but they're not saying words, but they're going, then probably the skills system is going to say, you know, while we're working on manding, not like you have to wait until this is on board, but they're going to have you start working on echoics so that you're saying ba, 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 having it be reinforcing so that you're strengthening the muscles for the child and strengthening the child's abilities to begin to mand. Like you might be doing echoics and having bubbles, and you're doing the bubbles and saying, you know, say ba, ba, ba for the bubbles, and as soon as the child says ba, you blow and there's bubbles everywhere, and in that way their ba becomes the mand for the bubbles. So different places for different kids. Now if you have a child who makes no sounds whatsoever, there are no utterances, maybe your child is apraxic or they just haven't made utterances yet, then there are some ways that you're going to start to work on manding, and the skills system is going to help you to start with that and say, here are some lessons that we want to work on. That you may work on nonverbal imitation first. It's really going to depend on your individual child. But so important that we keep in mind that signing is okay. That's a great place to start. And PECS is a great place to start. If your child is not... Look, if it's taking a long time for your child because it's particularly difficult for them to find it reinforcing to make the sound, then we're not going to work on that first. What we're going to do is back up, and we're going to give the child something that's even easier so they get to the reinforcement. Now, that might sound terrifying to you, saying, well, wait a minute, does that mean we've given up on my child speaking? No, ma'am, not at all. In fact, studies have shown that for kids who find it particularly difficult to get to language, the way to get them there quicker is to start with something else, because what they learn is how reinforcing it is, which makes it that much easier when you get to working on vocal language. So that if a child knows, hey, all I have to do is point to this picture and you give me a cookie, great. I want to do that. So the challenging behavior becomes smaller. The child really likes this system of I get reinforced when I ask for things. I've been pointing to it. But so now when we get to the lessons on echoics and you saying k, k, k for cookie, they're willing to do the hard work because they know I'm going to get reinforced for it. Science has shown us again and again and again this is a great way, and that it's actually quicker to get the child to speak in those circumstances than if you didn't put that other step in. How brilliant is that? Okay, so I know we all have emotions about that and go, but I want my child to be learning language as soon as possible. But know that this precursor for some of our kids makes that faster. But when we get down to it, here's the thing. Everything that your child wants, you have to make them request it in some way. You're going to set up that circumstance. You have to be abundantly clear about what is the appropriate way to give it to them. And they have to do something. You are going to reward approximations in the beginning. So it may be that you teach your child more. This is the sign for more. That's the thing that you start with, right? So that you give them a piece of cookie, and when they want more cookie, they have to do this. Now, you can physically prompt them to do this. You can pick up both, you put the cookie down, you pick up both their hands and say more, and you say it to them while you're doing it, more cookie, and then you know, they have to do it, and then they get more. That's manding. Laying that groundwork. You do the thing, it's compliance too. You do this and you're going to get more. Then we can start to work on, I think this is cookie for signs, but you can also have a picture of a cookie. You can have it on your iPhone, you can have it on your Android phone, you can have it on your tablet device, or you can, you know, print, you can draw a picture of a cookie. Better to have it be more realistic though, unless you're a great drawer. I'm not so good at that. You can find a cookie on Google Images and print it out on your computer. You can invest in flashcards if you want, right? The child can point to it, and that counts too. You can have that on the table and say, you know, do you want cookie? And the child is reaching for the cookie, right? You've brought the cookie out and you're tempting them with the cookie, right? They're reaching for the cookie, and you say, point to the cookie and you can have the cookie. That's another way that you can teach that. And then you give it immediately. That's the main thing with a mand, is that whatever they ask for when you're working on manding man, you try to have that be absolutely, they do whatever it is, whatever approximation, whatever gesture, whatever sound, whatever close to it, and man, you got to get it there, because that's what's going to reinforce it, and it's going to happen more and more and more. So you got to consider, obviously, if it's something that's dangerous or not healthy for them, not so much. But anything else, this is one of those times when you throw other things to the wind and say, we don't usually give popsicles at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, but we do today because you asked for it. And maybe you don't give the whole popsicle, maybe you give a piece of the popsicle, and then they ask for the popsicle again, or they ask for more, and you give them more. Eke it out, right? Make them work for it. That's really what we're doing, is making them work for it. And that's how we teach manding. There is that moment when, for all children, when we have to ask them to make the choice to mand in order to get something. I remember with my son, what it was a ball. There was a toy that you put the ball in and it does this whole thing, and he wanted that ball more than anything else, but it was so stinking hard for him. And they'd worked on, more ball and all that stuff. But finally, I remember the therapist holding the ball up and saying, holding it towards him and him reaching for it and putting it behind and saying, say ball. And then finally he went, bah, and he got that ball. And man, that was it. He could say ball with the best of them. And we expanded that into a lot of other things. I love to watch the early videos. It's painful too, but I love to watch, knowing what I know now, the earlier videos with him and Peter Farrig, who's a fabulous therapist. And Peter just made him ask for everything and taught us to make him ask for everything. He manded and he got it. It's where it starts. That's where it starts, what it's all about. All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, it's time for the myth of the day. So stick with us. We're going to be back with more. I'm here today with Sarah Cho, who is the managing supervisor of CARD Fresno. And she's a wonderful resource, and today we're going to be talking with her about using assisted technology.
If you are a parent of a child who is primarily nonvocal and maybe has been using a type of iconic communication system, and you are recognizing that your child has really just outgrown it, it is something. They need something faster. They need something better. There's so much more that we can do in the world of augmentative devices. I am a huge fan of using augmentative device programs on cell phones and also on iPads. As you and I were chatting, we had just downloaded a really simple tap to talk program. So for this one, all a child would need to be able to do is just tap on what they wanted.
I want a drink.
And then that immediately pulls up a screen where there's water, juice, milk, soda, and smoothie. So maybe the child just wanted a drink of their water.
Water, please.
And it's that simple. And there's not a lot to manipulate. The child does not have to have really advanced motor skills at all.
We're seeing more and more organizations advocating getting an iPad because of all those features. But it's not just for kids who are non-vocal.
We have a lot of kids, who have significant impairment in their sensory regulation. They really are seeking visual input, auditory input, tactile input. And if they're learning to appropriately play with a cell phone or with an iPad or with a computer, it provides those levels of appropriate sensory stimulation. So you're getting appropriate sensory, hopefully leading to a decrease in some of those repetitive behaviors, and you're teaching age-appropriate play skills. You know, they have free apps even if you're working on verb use, and the child can actually scroll through the different pictures and practice talking and narrating what they see in the pictures. There's just a lot of wonderful things that you can get from devices nowadays. You know, whether we're looking at language, social, play.
For my son, it's quite the social thing. When he sees somebody else who has one, he gravitates to them and they start playing together. It really starts the conversation with the other child.
What games do you have? What apps do you have? Can I play that one? Can I see it?
Yeah. And a lot of the apps are super inexpensive or free.
Or free.
Which is, you can't be free. Free is good.
You know, so I mean, you might have that initial investment in actually purchasing an appropriate device, but then a lot of the software or things that you need, you know, are free or relatively inexpensive. There are also some really nice applications that might be a little bit more expensive, maybe like $20 or $30, where you can essentially download the entire, for example, PEC's icon library for just that little initial, you know, investment.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California, and it is time for the myth of the day. And this one kind of applies to our holiday that we're going to be celebrating on Wednesday, that all sensory issues are the same. How big of a myth is that? That's one of those steaming piles of poo, right? And this one in particular, I don't know why, but for some reason this one is emotionally power-packed for me. We've said earlier today that phrase about once you know one person with autism, well then you know one person with autism. And it's amazing to me because sensory issues can be such a big deal, right? And not just for kids on the spectrum, for all of us. I'm sure you've been someplace at some time where somebody has been making some noise that, you know, it was in the background, and then it got to the point where you're like, no, seriously, stop that now because I'm right on the edge, right? Imagine if that was your everyday. And for some of our kids, that's what their everyday is. They don't have the ability to filter, right? If you had to hear, like right now, I'm sitting here in a studio that's supposed to be absolutely silent, but I can hear a click and I can hear a high-pitched whine from the air conditioner. I can hear all these different sounds, right? And I tune that out on a minute-by-minute basis, right? I'll become aware of a sound and then I tune it out and back to what I'm focused on. But for our kids, being able to tune some of those things out, they're hyper-aware sometimes. And different things are upsetting to different people. You might be able to sit there and listen, you know, and to a conversation and not have problem with the fact that the baby is crying 3 tables over, but somebody else is having a hard time concentrating because all they can hear is the baby crying. So our kids are the same way. And I remember early on meeting somebody, and I don't even remember now who it was, but I remember I was so offended. So it's funny that I can't remember who it was. But my son is very tactile, and he likes to touch people, and he likes to be held, and he likes to give hugs, and he's very, very, very affectionate. And you know, we've tried to work on that over the years for it to be more socially acceptable and appropriate, because when he was little, you know, he could get away with a lot of stuff that as a 9-year-old he can't get away with anymore, right? And I can remember in preschool that parents would come in and volunteer and do different things, and anytime any parent came in and sat down on the carpet with the kids, my son went over and sat in their lap. It just was what he did. It was what he liked to do, and he likes all that pressure, you know? And we would give him squeezes on a regular basis. He wasn't one of those kids who liked to be combed, but he liked to be squeezed, squished, as we would call it. Do you need your head squished? Come here. And when I would see that he would start to lose focus, we'd say, come here, let me squish your head for you, and just squish his head a little bit, and then he could be back focused on the thing he was dealing with. And at first, when he went to school with an aide, she would squish him. She would literally squish him. Over the years, we've taught him how to squish himself, how to, you know, put his hands in a certain way so that he could get that pressure, and that it would be totally acceptable for a 2nd grader and a 3rd grader and now a 4th grader. But I remember somebody early on hugging all of the other children, and I think it was another parent, because it certainly wasn't one of his teachers, but hugging all of the other children and not giving him a hug. And he was devastated. And like the whole day was shot after that because every single child got a hug except for him. And he wasn't quite at the point where he could completely identify that and say, I'm upset because I got left out, or even ask and say, why did you, he wasn't at that point because it was preschool. And, but I remember the teachers were able to acknowledge it and say to the person, I wasn't there, but they told me about it afterwards. They were able to say, why did you not give him a hug? You know that autism is not contagious. Oh, I just assumed because so many kids with autism hate to be touched. There's those darn myths in the way. And they said, no. That's some kids on the autism spectrum. For this child, he lives and breathes for that. And then they felt all bad about it. I don't think they did end up hugging him because it was past the moment or whatever it was. But I remember that I had a child who was really upset for the rest of the day. And it just brought home that you can't assume. Now, for me, on the other side of it is because my son has autism and loves to be hugged, I was predisposed to want to hug children. And so when I meet a child with autism, I have to remind myself I need to wait it out and see, because some kids don't like to be touched. And other kids love it. And other kids, it's something in between. So in any case, all of our kids' sensory issues are different. For your child might go to the fireworks and just love the loud noises, where another child might be deeply disturbed by them. For another child, it may be the music that plays during the fireworks that is aversive or fabulous. None of the sensory issues are the same. Some of our kids want to be in a shirt that's tight, and some of them can't bear to be in a shirt that's tight. Some of them can be driven crazy by a label in the back of the shirt, and others, it wouldn't matter at all. Like they could not notice their shirt could be on backwards, and the big long, how some of those tags are just like, it's basically a term paper. I can't believe how long some of them are, but it could be flapping in their face and they wouldn't even notice it because their sensory issues are tuned into other things. So we should never make assumptions, right, about our own children's sensory issues or about other people's sensory issues. Really important to be open-minded and look at everybody as individuals and accept that all of us, you and I included, have sensory issues and sensory limits. I've shared before that for my son, he can go to something that's loud and a million people and a million different pitches, and he's totally fine. In the middle of it, no issue whatsoever. You leave there and go to a quiet environment, and that's when, if anything happens in that quiet environment, he has a hard time. I cannot handle during. I literally get to a point where I go, there's too much noise. I can't cope. I can't deal. I got to step outside. Different things for different people, but important to start to be aware of what your sensory issues are and what your child's sensory issues are. And then as you move through the world of autism, knowing that other people's kids' sensory issues are not yours. Myths. We just got to get rid of some of these myths and educate ourselves, right? Okay, so we got to take a break, and when we come back, we got a bunch of different things to talk about. I want to get to the NET tip of the week. I've been hinting about it all day long. We're going to talk about how we take travel time and use it. Stick with us.
Here I stand, a man, someone who has overcome struggles, someone who has endured perceptions of what others thought of him, thinking he was stupid because he was autistic, or simply believing him to be nothing because he was different to them in their minds. But I stood my ground. I just wanted to say to the organization in general, alongside helping me to improve communicatively and socially, the other greatest gifts you gave me were the value of discipline and a good work ethic. To quote Anthony Kiedis, to celebrate you is greater now that I can. You helped me to realize that the harder you work, the likelier you are to achieve success. Having had to work very, very hard to recover from autism, this discipline has continued to serve me well. I also realized that you taught me a lot about and instilled within me a quality of having compassion and sympathy for other people. That you will be concerned more with the needs and wishes of others than with your own is something that I awe and I constantly strive to be. And in closing, the only way I can sum up CARD, all of you, is love. Everything you do to help families in need, you do out of the sheer love of wanting to make a positive difference in people's lives. And as I stand here before you as a mature adult, I have to say that I'm extremely grateful for your unwavering loving commitments to helping others in need recover from potential life roadblocks and become active and contributing members of society. While I can't overcome obstacles without a will, I cannot have a will without the love of those supporting me. And without love, I am nothing. Thanks again so very much for your love, everything that you've done and continue to do. Please give my best wishes to your families, everybody else with CARD who isn't here, and especially all of your clients and their kids. I'm confident that they too will be able to overcome, and I know that they'll be successful in what they do as long as they continue to put their minds, hearts, passions, and best efforts into it. Enough said.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod, and that was Nick Yates that you just saw. He is an amazing young man who recovered from autism, and he is going to be with us tomorrow at 11 o'clock during this hour tomorrow. And he's going to be talking with us about bullying. And I think this is a really important topic for all of us, whether we have kids on the spectrum or not, but especially for those of us who have kids on the spectrum, because I think it is a reasonable expectation that at some point our children are going to be or feel bullied. And it is also a reasonable expectation that they are in danger of becoming bullies as much as they are in danger of being bullied. Even if it's unintentional, because sometimes our kids are going to say things and see things in such a black and white way that they're not going to realize that what they're saying is hurtful or harmful to someone else. So I think it's great that we have Nick as a resource to talk to us, because he can tell us firsthand what it is like to have been bullied. And you know, I always say, let's talk to the experts, and let's learn everything that we can about research that's being done on bullying, or anything for that matter. But it's really important, I think, to hear it from people who have been there and done that. And we do have that resource. We do have kids who have recovered, who have memories of what it felt like when they were in process, and some of the things that were different, some of the different things that were happening. So I just think that Nick is a really, really important resource. He is a very kind and generous person who is living his life without autism and has no need but devotes some of his time to talking to parents and teachers and to kids who are on the spectrum or have recently been deemed no longer on the spectrum about what this experience is like. I just really think that's a very precious, at some point, progress to the point where they are no longer qualified for their diagnosis. There are thousands and thousands of young people out there that is the case for, and they don't all come forward because it maybe isn't the best thing for them. But Nick is kind enough to do that for us. From time to time, he stops in and helps to make us more knowledgeable, which is a lovely, lovely thing. In any case, it is time for our NET tip of the week. I want to remind you again, Nick Yates tomorrow during the 11 o'clock hour. So our NET tip of the week, NET is for natural environment training. These are the moments where we're very organic teaching moments. We're really allowing it to be driven by the child. I think what's really important is to know that it's driven by the child, but that doesn't mean that we sit back and have no input and don't try to mold and scope. But for instance, if I'm saying to the child, well, you know, what do you want to do today? And the child says, I want to play with trains, then we go off to play with trains. But while we're playing with trains, I'm going to try to teach my child everything that I can within the context of playing trains. Not to the point where I make the train not reinforcing. I mean, let's have some common sense about this. But, you know, I want to make it extra reinforcing using the train. So if I got the train on the tracks and the train's going along, and I'm making noises and going choo-choo and saying, can you do this? And so then the child puts the train on the track and goes choo-choo and pushes it. And so they're doing imitation, which is absolutely amazing. Vocal imitation for the choo-choo and non-vocal imitation, just doing the motion that I did. That's fabulous. This is a teaching moment now. And I can say, what color is this car? And the child can say, red. The car is red. Yes, that's wonderful. And I'm reinforcing them for it. I'm using what they want to do as the basis for the lesson. I think it's really important to note that's what we're talking about with natural environment training, not just saying, okay, what do you want to do? Okay, we're going to go and play trains, and that's all we're going to do. And I'm going to lay on the floor and play trains with you, and I'm not going to find my teaching moments. We always want to be finding our teaching moments, right? And, you know, when we're looking at autism and everything is a teaching moment, we want to find as many of those teaching moments as we can and make the most of them, which does not mean that we are always drilling our child. I hear parents all the time, and I relate to it so much, say, you know, I'm not the best parent I could be because there are times when I just let him play and I go and watch an episode of whatever, fill in the blank. Well, you know what? There are times when your child does just need to play too. And there are times when you need to take a break too. But all the better for you to take that if you have filled the other teaching moments with as much teaching as possible. Effective and efficient, right? That's what we want to be. So I've been talking all day today about how the car is a great classroom. It's a time when you can power pack things in. Don't waste it. Think about what is your child working on right now and what could you be working on? What are the things that you want to strengthen more than anything right now? Now, if it's eye contact, that's going to be hard, right? Because if you're driving, you're not going to be able to work on eye contact. But pick other things. I remember when my son just was not getting the count to 100 and we would work on it in the car. And it wasn't ultimately the thing that got him to count to 100, but it was one of the steps along the way that we would do this thing where we would drive to school, and school's very close. So we would see if we could count to 100, and I would count to 100 and he would fill in the numbers that he knew, and it was useful. And we would get to school right at 100. Don't waste that time in the car. Find something to work on. And we talked the other day about pointing out signs. You can work on fluency with reading. That's actually one of the things that I was working on with my son over the weekend, is that he reads, but I want him to read a little bit faster, even though he reads ahead of grade level. And so when you're passing a sign, being able to read the sign, it also helps him with his focusing his vision, because he's got some visual muscle issues that we want to strengthen. So for him to read the sign as it's going by before we pass it is a really great thing for fluency and for his eye muscles. But what else? You can absolutely be working on labeling, and later on you can work on conversation skills. I do that with my son in the car, that we'll start to talk about something and he'll introduce a topic and I praise him for introducing the topic. But of course, usually it's video games, and we have the rule, you can tell me 5 things about video games and we'll go back and forth 5 times, and then you have to change the topic. And you have to change the topic to something you think I would like to talk about. And we can do that in the car. When he was little, I would just work on, look for the street lights. Look for the street lights, and if you see the street light, I want you to yell out, what color is it? Is it red or is it green? And red means stop and green means go. So we would do those kinds of things, keeping him aware. And I'll tell you what else it does, is that it keeps them plugged in. If our kids have time to just be like, and we all need some of that time, right? But if they have lots and lots of time to be, it's harder to get them plugged back in. So take the time in the car on the way to speech. You know, you're teaching them something, or you're tacting and saying, look, you know, it's whatever. It's a red car. Look, it's a yellow car. You can even play games in the car. Do you remember the games we used to play when we were kids? I don't know, maybe I'm dating myself. But we would go on long trips to see relatives, and my mother would have a list of things, and we called it playing water tower. And a water tower was worth 100 points, and each point was worth a penny. So if you wanted to make money, and so maybe a police car was worth 10 points, and a red truck was worth 5 points, and every day it would change. And my mother would make the list in the morning. Here are the things that we're looking for, and she would keep track of, and we would make money in the car that way. That's tacting. That's teaching tacting, because you want your child to yell out and go, "A blue van," right? So there are so many different things that you can do to interact in a car. Don't waste that precious, valuable time. It's good teaching time. All right, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to take on the DTT tip of the week, and stick around because we still have that funding conversation yet to come. So stick with us.
Skills is a revolutionary web-based program that incorporates comprehensive assessment, curriculum design, progress tracking, and treatment evaluation for children with autism all in one place. Developed by the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. Our approach is based on over 40 years of research on the principles of learning and their application to improving the lives of children with autism. How does Skills work? Created with speed and simplicity in mind, Skills was modeled on an easy 3-step process. Step 1. Start assessment. Step 1 begins with our intelligent assessment system, which consists of a series of questions. This assessment is essential to identifying your child's level of skills compared to their typical peers across all areas of development. This includes assessing social, motor, language, adaptive, play, cognition, executive functions, and academic skills. Every skill has an assigned age, which indicates when the skill emerges during typical development. This means that each child is automatically presented only with lessons that are relevant to his or her age. Step 2. Choosing activities. It's now easier than ever to build an individualized treatment plan. In Step 2, you are presented with an individualized pool of activities that are directly linked to your student's assessment results. Each activity represents a specific skill that has been indicated by the assessment as needing to be taught. Activities are categorized by curriculum and then by lesson. There are 3 main types of skills: building blocks, fundamental, and expansion skills. Fundamental skills are necessary for successful everyday functioning. Building blocks are prerequisites to a fundamental skill. Expansion skills are non-essential skills, but may provide further enrichment in certain areas. After reviewing the activities available to you, you can quickly add your chosen activities to the treatment plan by simply checking the box and clicking the button. Step 3. Start treatment. Once you have selected and added the activities you want, you are ready to begin teaching. Skills provides you with all the tools necessary to design and manage an effective curriculum plan, such as printable activity guides that are customizable by the teacher, supplemental teaching aids including printable data sheets, teaching guides, visual aids, worksheets, and tracking forms, detailed IEP goals and benchmarks for each activity, brief and visually appealing video tutorials, a variety of treatment progress and clinical timeline charts, and lots more. And since Skills is completely web-based, everything you need is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, in one easy-to-access location. Skills users even benefit from unlimited access to a support community, where they can ask questions and share ideas with a skills expert. Skills is always with you.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod, and it's the time of the week when we give our DTT tip of the week. DTT, which stands for Discrete Trial Teaching. Discrete Trial Teaching is something that's going to be a part of our ABA program. It's a great way for us to introduce a new skill. When you're thinking, okay, well, I want to teach something to my child, but I don't know how to do it. DTT is a great way to introduce a new skill because it breaks it down into the smallest increment, and it sets up a situation in which it makes it very clear what you want the child to do, and you very clearly give them reinforcement for it. So we've talked before about, I love Evelyn Gould's example of if we were going to go to a foreign country, and let's say that I go off to Russia and I'm in someone's house and I don't know the language whatsoever, and I'm standing up in the bedroom and somebody comes up to the bedroom and they start saying a stream of Russian to me, and what they're saying, if I could understand it, is, oh, you know, I'm so glad that you're here. I want you to come downstairs and sit at the table because I prepared a wonderful meal for you that you're really going to love. It's this dish that my grandmother made, and you're really going to love it. And then they stop the sentence and look at me. Well, there was a request in that sentence, but I have no idea what they said. No idea whatsoever. I've got no contextual clues whatsoever, because we're standing in the bedroom and what they want me to do is to come down to the dining room. There was no gesture. I have no possibility of learning in this moment what it is that they want me to do. Now, they might grab my arm and lead me downstairs and set me in front of the table, and I go, great, they want me to eat, but I still have no idea which words in the sentence were the ones that said, come to the table and eat. So I've gained no knowledge. The next time they say that same set of words to me again, I'm not going to know that they want me to come and eat, right? I've learned nothing in this moment. However, if the person had come upstairs, taken my arm, led me down to the table, and said in Russian the one word and pointed and said, eat, I would learn the word eat in Russian very quickly, right? Because they removed all of the other stuff, set up a circumstance in which it was very clear what they want me to do. They paired it with the word so that I got it, eat, with the word that they said, and I learned. This is what DTT does on a regular basis. Remove all of the other distractions and say, do this, and you're going to get a reward. So consider that if I want the child to say cookie, right, I'm holding up the cookie and I'm pointing to the mouth and saying, you know, I show the cookie, I say cookie, and I say cookie, right? The child says cookie, boom, you get the cookie. The reinforcement has to be right there. And that's what today's tip is that we set up these circumstances, and then when we set up those circumstances, you must deliver immediately. And I promise you, it's one of the hardest things to learn. We just went through this with, if you've been watching the show, you know that we rescued a dog. Oh my goodness, did we rescue a dog? And we went to the pound, and we had two camps of people. People were like, no, don't do that. Don't do that. And other people were like, absolutely do that. Save a dog. And I'm all about, it's so important to save a dog. And we went and we got this dog who is lovely. She's just delish. You know what I'm saying? With us, she is the most fabulous dog on the face of the planet. She has issues with anybody else on the world outside of my family. And we quickly saw that it was beyond challenging behavior, right? And when it's challenging behavior, you got to call in an expert, right? You want to talk about making me walk my talk. I sit here and say that to you guys and say, look, there are some things that are beyond your pay grade. Get an expert, right? So I had to do that with the dog. And yes, it was expensive. And we had to send her away to doggy boot camp. She was there for, I think, 6 weeks because she was a little bit of a tough thing to, but they worked with her, and basically, you know, my understanding, I don't know that they call it DTT, but they were doing DTT-esque things with her. They were setting up clear consequences, clear expectations, giving her clear reinforcement immediately. And the difference in this dog, we got her back on Saturday, the difference in the dog is absolutely amazing. But I keep pointing out to my son and to my husband and to myself that if we do not keep up the clear expectations, the clear rewards, then it's not going to stay. It's just behavior, right? It has to be maintained. And what's interesting to me is the thing, and we're all helping each other, policing each other and saying, you remember, you got to do this, because it's hard to see it for yourself. And guess where I am the worst? At the immediate reinforcement. I'm really good at delivering the SD and saying, you know, do this, which my husband, frankly, has more difficulty with. The dog has been trained when she's on the leash that she is not to pull. And they paired all this reinforcement with her, so when she starts to pull, we're to just very, you know, quickly, very quick, not anything harsh, but quickly pull back and say, don't pull, right? And then she corrects herself and we say, good dog. Well, my husband is having a hard time remembering to do the don't pull. I'm having a hard time remembering to do the good dog. So we're a perfect pair to go walk the dog, because I pull back and go don't pull, and he says good dog. But we both need to learn the other half of it. So when I was thinking about this yesterday and thinking, you know, what DTT, it's the one that I got to work on, the immediate reinforcement. Because what happens if we don't give it immediately? What happens if, going back to my Russian scenario that's not really mine, that's Evelyn Gould's, what happens if she's very specific and she comes up to the bedroom, leads me downstairs to the food, and she says to me, eat, right? But then she doesn't let me eat. Am I going to connect that eat means eat? No, I didn't get the reinforcement of getting to eat. So, you know, with our children, if we ask our children to do something and they do, and we don't immediately give them, like the cookie, the child asks for the cookie and we say, okay, I'll get the cookie in a minute, because sometimes life is like that, right? But so we wait 5 minutes, and in the interim, the child is picking their nose. And that's the moment when we go, oh, right, you're picking your nose because you got nothing else to do. I was supposed to get you a cookie. And we go get the cookie. What are we teaching the child? Pick your nose and you get the cookie. That's not what we want to teach, right? And it, you know, and whether the child gets it in one instance, it, you know, maybe not, but we still want to set up those clear consequences. When you say cookie, you get a cookie. When, you know, I say to the dog, don't pull, and she doesn't pull, you get a good girl, attaboy, right? And by the way, they worked a long time for her to find it reinforcing enough to get the good girl. When they started, she got a piece of cheese. And I'm amazed that she's not the 300-pound dog, because it took a lot of cheese. Can we say that? Of course we can say that. In any case, reinforce immediately. It's the thing in DTT that is the learning moment. It makes it the worthwhile thing. They must get reinforced for it immediately. Okay, it's time to take the break, and then when we come back, it is time, finally, for us to talk about the funding. Today we're going to be talking about how do you bridge the gap if you've got insurance now, and in California, a lot of you do. Some of you don't still. We're going to talk about that too. But if you do have it, how do you bridge that gap of getting your deductible paid? Stick with us.
Hi, I'm Shannon Penrod, and this is my son Jem. We're here today at the Home Depot. You might know that Home Depot is famous for giving free classes to adults on lots of things like tiling and other home crafts. Well, they also have free classes for kids as well. It's called the Kids Workshop. We love doing that, don't we, Jem?
Yeah.
It's cool. So come on inside with us and let's do a craft.
Yay.
The Kids Workshop is a program that's been around with Home Depot almost since we've been a company, and it's been developed to allow kids in the community to come in and give them an opportunity to build something, to be able to create something and be able to take just simple wood pieces and put them together with nails and hammers and screwdrivers and then paint them.
So you do this every first Saturday of the month.
Any Home Depot that you go to on the first Saturday of every month between 9 and 12, you can join different associates throughout different stores and build these projects with these kids.
And do they have to do anything beforehand, or can they just show up on that Saturday?
All they need to do is show up. We have all the tools, all the materials that the kids will need. We have aprons that we give to the kids that they can take home and maintain their pins. They get pins on a regular basis for completing projects. With that, they can keep track of how many projects they've done. And
it's all free.
It's all absolutely free, all provided.
Which is wonderful. And Wilson, I have to say, you guys devised this for all kids to be able to do this.
Correct.
What I particularly love about it as an autism mom, it gives my child a place to come and learn a new skill, to socialize with kids of all kinds.
Absolutely. And that's what we're here for. Home Depot is definitely love to be involved with the community and bring the community in to work with us. That's what we love to do.
Welcome back to Autism Live. That was my son you just saw. Can I just tell you, I was so sick on that day. I was so sick on that day. You can hear it in my voice a little bit. And I have crazy woman hair. That's my excuse. I was sick, but we had a good time. Even though I was sick, we had a really good time. It was really very exciting to be there at Home Depot. I want to remind all of you that this coming Saturday is the day for the month of July. It's the first Saturday of every month, so this Saturday will be the day. I'll try to look up and see what exactly the craft is so that we can talk about it, but it's free. It's free. Go there in the morning. See how much your child can handle sensory-wise, because it's going to happen every month, so you can work up to being there. It's a lot of hammers, but they will let you take the craft home if your child gets to the point, and you can tell with your own child when they've had a little bit too much, right? But it's so fun, and it's so reinforcing, and it may be that you end up doing most of the craft with your child's help, with keeping your child there, but there's so many different things to do, and they can interact with the other children. And we have really seen our son's skills, fine motor and social, and reading directions, and talking to the people there grow over the years. It's something wonderful that you can do that's absolutely no cost. It's very reinforcing to the children. Different aspects will be differently reinforcing to the kids, but I have taken other friends and said, let's have a play date at the Home Depot, and brought, ones that are very little, and they all find something reinforcing. It's quite the learning opportunity, and it's free, and they get to bring something home, and they get a pin that's very reinforcing. You gotta love Home Depot. So that's something that you can do. But we want to talk about funding. And again, I want to remind you that we had Misty Mackey with us on Friday. And she is the insurance contracts coordinator here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. And we were asking her about the Affordable Health Care Act, and we were asking her about insurance reform, because it's official, it's here, we have it today as of July 1st, so here we are. A lot of people in California have insurance coverage for ABA that they did not have last week. There are a lot of people who still don't. And I am painfully aware of that. I'm on my husband has his insurance, and my son and I are on his insurance, and self-funded. So it does not include us on that plan. I understand where, but 2014, if things stay the way they are, and the Supreme Court did uphold the Affordable Health Care Act, on January 1st, 2014, we will all be included, and all of our children will be eligible regardless of what plan. If you are unemployed, there will be an affordable plan that you will have access to, is my understanding. In any case, you can watch that interview with Misty Mackey on YouTube and see all the ins and outs. She gives some really important advice for saving thousands of dollars if you're having to get insurance right now in the state of California. That may be useful to those of you in the rest of the states. I don't know. It's going to depend state by state. Also want to remind you that one of the things that we talked about is that with insurance comes this deductible and or copay. It depends on your insurance provider. But for a lot of you today, you are facing a $5,000 copay that you somehow have to come up with, which once you pay that $5,000, then either all of it or the lion's share of the ABA will be paid for by your insurance provider. So what are we going to do about that? This is like roll up the sleeves time. And I also want to remind you that when I was talking, I'm literally rolling up the sleeves. I want to remind you when I was talking about this on Friday, I was saying, let us know if you're having problems with that because we have some things that we can talk about. I want to remind you when I was saying I'm talking about Autism Live, that you can write to me here. You can email. I'm going to ask Matt to put up our email address on the screen so that you can write in with questions. And I personally will even help you with making individual suggestions. There it is, about what you can do in your individual circumstances. That's me. Your ABA provider is not going to be able to help you with that. They can help you with finding out if you're covered by insurance, but that $5,000 deductible or the copay or the deductible, it's going to be up to you to solve that. And I personally would like to help you to solve that. So just some beginning ideas of some things that you can consider is that you might want to think of applying for a grant. And there are a couple of different places that we can tell you that are possibilities for grants. Autism Care and Treatment Today, ACT Today, and Matt, I'm going to also ask you to put up that website for them, which is www.act-today.org. Again, that's www.act-today.org. Fabulous. And as of today, they are in an open grant phase, which means that you can today apply for a grant at ACT Today. Visit their website and you can find out more about that. You're going to have to fill out a bunch of different paperwork. You're going to have to write what it is that you would like the grant for. And by the way, ACT Today gives grants for anything that a parent needs for their child for autism. So let's say, you've been told by your OT person that your child would benefit from jumping up and down on a trampoline, and you'd really like to get a trampoline for the backyard and you just can't afford it. You can ask for a grant for that. You can ask for a grant for your deductible. You can ask for a grant for the copay. You can ask for a grant for skills. You can ask for a grant for CARD e-learning. You can ask for a grant for an iPad. They have granted all of those things and more. They've granted monies for fences. So, stop and consider, what could you use a grant for? Is it for the deductible? You can ask for that from ACT Today. There is a waiting list. I'm not going to tell you that you just ask for it and it's a done deal. There's a waiting list and they're constantly raising funds to help more people, but you might as well ask and start asking, right? And you can do that today on their website. There are only a couple of times a year, I think it's 3, maybe 4 times a year, that they open for grant acceptance, and this is one of them. So now is an ideal time to be asking them for the thing that you need. There are a couple of other things that you consider though too, and there is the United Healthcare Children's Fund, and you can Google that, and I don't know, they have specific guidelines, but I have been told by at least one person that they are going to be granting for deductible. I don't know if that's true, but it's worth looking into. And I also want to let you know that earlier today I was talking about that we were in a position where we were able to get services provided from our school district. There's the United Healthcare Fund. You don't have to Google it. Matt, you're so good and on it. But there is also something that we personally used in my home where we had to pay a bill and get reimbursed for it. And we didn't have the capital to pay the bill to wait to be reimbursed. So we went to an autism walk and found the Jewish Free Loan Association. And this is a wonderful, wonderful organization. And by the way, it's called the Jewish Free Loan Association, but you do not have to be Jewish. My family happens to not be Jewish, and they gave us a tremendous loan. I want to say it was $5,000. And we had the ability, we were given a certain amount of time to have it. It was interest-free, but we didn't have to make payments on it for a certain amount of time. time, and then it was monthly payments that we had to make on it. There was a lot of paperwork to fill out, but we did it, and it saved us. It gave us that chunk of money that we could be paying our provider, which happened to be the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, and then we would be reimbursed by the school district, and we could pay the card again and get reimbursed by the school district at a time when we didn't have that kind of money just laying around in an account. You could use it for your co-payment and be making monthly payments. If you don't have the $5,000 out of that, you can just, but you could be paying, say, $150 or whatever the agreement is. You could be paying on that. You do have to apply for it, and you can visit them, Jewish Free Loan Association. I think it is jfla.org, jewishfreeloanassociation.org. So there are organizations like that. But one of the other things that I want you to consider, because if you're saying to yourself, well, okay, but if I've got to pay $150 a month, $200 a month, it's still going to be a hardship. I don't know how we're going to do this. And that's when we get into talking about fundraising. That there are different ways that you can raise money. We've talked about these kinds of things before on the show, that you can have an event, and here's my offer to you. If you're going to have a fundraiser to raise the money to meet your copay or your deductible, what I'd like you to do is figure out what the fundraiser is going to be, and if you want some help figuring out what might be a good fundraiser for you personally using your personal assets, like you have a big backyard, so you're going to have something in your backyard. Lots of people who are baseball people, you're going to have like a baseball event. Whatever it is, figure it out for what your assets are. But if you decide to have a fundraiser, here's what I would like to do for you. You can email us, and I will talk about your fundraiser as a promotion here on the show. Then we'll be able to put it up on YouTube, and you can put it on your Facebook page to let all your friends know, and that we'll have talked about it here on the show. So there's the email. So if you need to get the word out about your fundraisers, write to me here at this address, and I will talk about it here on the show. That's my promise to you. That's just one of the ways that I can help you out, because there are ways for you to raise, and maybe, I would love it if you started thinking in terms of raising $10,000 so that you have this year covered and next year covered, so that you can say, done. We've got that done. But even if you raise $2,000, it gets you that much closer. But what I was saying on Friday is, don't decide that you can't raise the $5,000 so you're not going to get the treatment. The insurance company, it may be where you are. Here in the state of California, there are no caps and there's no age limits. So what does that mean? That means that an 8-year-old child, if the necessity is there, the medical necessity for that child to have 40 hours a week, then that's going to be a huge, huge bill, right? And if you only have to pay $5,000 to get $80,000 or $100,000 worth of therapy, that $5,000 is going to be so worth it. It's going to be the best investment you've ever made in your life. And I know it's scary to think, wait a minute, I'm going to invest $5,000 now, and then I'm going to invest $5,000 more next year. Yeah, and probably the year after and the year after that too. For my son, it was 5 years. You know what? It was worth it. So don't give up. Don't give up. I said on Friday, that's just not allowed. There are ways that you can fundraise that money. Clever, clever ways that you can do it. My goodness. Look at what just happened when the bullies on the bus and with the elderly woman in Rochester, New York, and they've raised over $650,000 for her to take early retirement and go on vacation. If they can put something up on fundraiser and raise $650,000 for her, then you can certainly raise $5,000 or $10,000 to help your child and turn your child around. There are things like fundraiser that you can put it up on. In fact, we should mention that one of our good friends here at Autism Live, a daddy blogger, Tom Hibben, his family lost their family home. just last week to a fire and lost a lot of their equipment, and it's now being called the Hibben Fire Fund, and it is on fundraiser.com, and you can search and find the Hibben Fire Fund. And I haven't checked it today, but they were trying to raise $5,000, and they were at around $4,000 the last time I checked it, and that only took 48 hours. So, and please support that family. I know on his blog yesterday, was it yesterday or Saturday, Tom took the time to write and say how much it meant to him, how people were supporting. It's adventuresinaspergers.com is his blog. And please support that family. Let them know whether it's that you're donating or sharing their story, because you want that to come around back to you, right? It's what you would want. But my point is that there are ways to raise this money. Do not deny your child, do not deny yourself of this really important treatment that is life-changing. You won't be sorry. All right, we got to take one last quick break, and then we're going to come back to finish out the show with a quick adaptive tip. So stick with us.
I am grateful for Autism Speaks because they allow families like me to have hope.
They're working towards having these children live better lives.
There's a space for you. Yeah, there's a world for you, and there's a community that is behind you.
And one that has really been able to be the singular voice for people who are involved with and who care about autism.
I do have autism, but I don't let that become a disability for me. Autism Speaks is going to continue to help those who need it, and just look at all the stuff they've done so far and you will be impressed.
3, 2, 1.
And you need to support the walks. We have to raise awareness, but we also have to raise funds to do the work.
I'm grateful for Autism Speaks for one main reason, is they are allowing me to focus on the research.
The work that Autism Speaks has been doing is critical for keeping autism research on the radar screen.
We proclaimed 2 April as the World Autism Awareness Day. I'm very proud of the UN and thankful Autism Speaks.
Getting the health mandate bill passed in New Jersey particularly, we needed to be able to make an argument, not just do this because it's the right thing to do, but do it because it's cost effective.
When everyone else told me nothing was wrong with my son, I got information from a website that told me something wasn't right.
I am so proud of Autism Speaks for creating these beautiful ad campaigns, which have reached people who are not affected by autism and have also created a greater climate of compassion and understanding.
It's been really great for Bachman to have gotten involved with Autism Speaks early on. I think everybody here feels like they really make a difference.
To make sure that we generate as much money as we can for Autism Speaks so we can all solve this puzzle together.
There's no way we could have come this far without our families, without our supporters to date, but there's so much farther we have to go. And everybody's invited to join this cause. We need all the help we can get to make the difference we know we can make.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're at the end of the show here, but we have a quick adaptive tip that I wanted to give for you today, our adaptive tip of the week. And it's talking on the phone, that we want to work on talking on the phone with our kids, and we want to start as early as possible. There are lots of different ways that we can work on this, and there are lessons in the skills program. I want to remind you that right now they have a special that if you buy 1 month, you get the other 2 months of summer for free. So it's a really good deal. 1 month for 3 months. I love that. And But in any case, we want to work on having our children talk on the phone. We do this with kids who are neurotypically developing, that we get them a play phone, and we do that thing, right? Where we pick up the phone and go, oh, it's for you, and we hand the phone to them. I can't remember which comic it is. It might be Carol Burnett, who says, no one is too busy that when a child answers a play phone and hands it to you, that you always answer that phone, right? We're all willing to do that. But so, you know, when you have a child who didn't find the play phone reinforcing, it kind of goes by the wayside and you don't get other phones. And, you know, if the child isn't learning language, sometimes you just get further and further behind. So today is a good day to reintroduce the phone. Get a play phone, and they have amazing play phones now that you can record conversations so that they're actually hearing something on the other end. But you don't have to do that. In this day and age where we all have phones and we have cell phones and things, it's a great time to make phones and talking on the phones really reinforcing. It's different than it used to be, and I see this with my son all the time, and he still to this day gets confused because we didn't work on it early enough, but we keep working on it, right? That when he is talking on the home phone, he holds it away. He's so used to talking on speakerphone with a cell phone, because that's how he talks to grandma, you know, and so he holds the phone like this. So when he's got the home phone, he holds it like this, and I always have to remind him, no, honey, this is the phone you hold up to your ear. It's not the worst thing in the world, right? But getting used to the give and take and the back and forth. You can be in your home and have one person with your child in the living room, and you can be down the hallway on the other phone practicing having conversations. Let's remember that opportunity is one of the big factors in success in learning a new skill. So we want to teach phone etiquette, but then give them a whole lot of practice. And depending on how old they are, it's going to be different, right? But you can work on this with a 2-year-old, that you can have, you know, daddy sitting in the living room with his cell phone and mommy's down the hall or in the bedroom with her cell phone and have a conversation. Do you know that I didn't have a conversation with my son on the phone until he was probably 6 or 7 years old, because it didn't occur to me, he hadn't had the language earlier, and it didn't occur to me what a great thing it would be for him to talk to me on the phone, and I was always home. And it is one of the great joys in my life, if I'm not home on a given day, and to be able to call and talk to him on the phone. There's nothing sweeter than our little kids' voices on the phone. And if your child isn't yet vocal, what a great way to make it reinforcing for them that you can be talking to them on the phone, you can be singing to them on the phone, you can ask them a question on the phone. It's a great fun activity to do. And as the child grows and develops skills, this is a skill that can change quite a bit. They need to learn a certain amount of perspective taking with the phone, because we'll hear a young child saying on the phone something that is not understandable because you don't have visual, you can't see. So it helps to teach the child, now, can mommy see what you're doing? No. But usually you got to have 2 people. And again, you don't have to be out of the house to talk on the phone to your child with cell phones. All right. And what a wonderful time to introduce, if you've got a cell phone, if you've got a smartphone, some of the different things that they can be doing to communicate on the phone as well. It's a new day, it's a new era. In any case, it's that time of the show where the show is going to end, but the conversation continues. There are so many ways for you to be in contact with us, and I'm going to ask Matt to start to share some of those on the screen for you. If you're hearing me say Matt, and you're thinking, what happened to Emily? Is Emily still not here? Emily is still very much a part of the team. She was in Boston this weekend. You can follow, she's got an ongoing blog about things happening in Boston. She was there for the Boston opening of the Center for Autism and Related Disorders' new Boston area office. So check that out on the Facebook page. But in any case, here are some of the different ways that you can be getting a hold of us. We appreciate all of your comments, your questions. You can tell us how we're getting it done for you, what we're helping you with, and you can also tell us if something we're saying isn't clear or that it didn't work for you. We want to hear it all from you. You can tweet us, find us on Facebook. We're loving that more and more of you are liking us on Facebook. We really appreciate that. And there's lots of different ways for you to watch us. Watch us on Blip TV. You can be watching us on YouTube. You can download us for free on iTunes. iTunes, and of course, you can always be watching us on Ustream. All of those wonderful ways. I believe the audio only is going to be coming very soon to the YouTube channel, or excuse me, the iTunes channel, so that you can download us and take us on walks or take us in the car, however it works for you. I want to remind you that we're here to support you. This is a free service to answer your questions. So the big question is, what do you need? And if you will please write to us and contact us and let us know what we can do to help you on this journey so that you do not have to feel like you are alone. Tomorrow, big day here. It's going to be our last day before we're going to take a day off for the 4th of July, of course, but we are going to have Nick Yates with us during the 11 o'clock hour tomorrow. He is a young man who recovered from autism. He is going to be with us talking about the all-important topic, bullying. So you're definitely going to want to tune in then. Until tomorrow, please give your kiddos a hug from me. Bye-bye for now.